And we're live.
Good evening, all. It is me, it is Edward. I am back, your temporary host. I'm here whenever Tom has to don his suit and cape and fight crime at short notice. Welcome back to the show with the most mathematical symbols in its name in the Warhammer universe. I am joined, as always, by our glorious leader, who again has never threatened me. How are you doing, Chris?
I am very well. I'm on half term, so a week off. Enjoying it very much. So yes.
Fantastic. The schools that I looked after work are also at half term, so I'm still there, but I'm doing significantly less work, so I'm also enjoying that.
Well, we had a glorious trip. Chantal, Edward, and I were going to head off to Hunstanton for the day, which is a nearby beach, and enjoy that. And then after about 10 minutes, Edward was like, "I feel sick," and a bag full of vomit later. We were heading back and watching lots of Diary of the Wimpy Kid videos.
Just to quickly clarify, that was a different Ed to me.
That is, yeah.
I'm sorry, Chris, for ruining your trip. I did have too many ice lollies, and I will endeavour to do better in the future.
Yeah, well, we've had the conversation and we're okay now.
Ed does just third wheel on all of Chris's days.
I'm not only here to ruin your life at Warhammer events, I'm here to ruin your life at all times, including at a podcast and lovely dates with your girlfriend.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Jack, this is a face that I don't think anyone here will have seen, at least not in conjunction with this podcast.
I've never seen him before either.
You will recognise the name, though, because Jack has been quite active in our chat. Gelmaris, who not only is Tom a knight in shining armour and a caped crusader, so is Jack, swooping in at the last second to help us when we had a drop, and came in, not only played very well over the weekend, which we'll get into, but is apparently a wizard at pairings. So he's going to be talking about his process, how he approached each team, what we went with, where it went wrong, which was definitely not his fault. I might blame Chris. It was probably my fault. And sort of how we went from there. How are you doing, Jack?
Doing excellently. It's great to be here. Great to be podcasted again. It's been a couple of years for me. But yeah, it's good to be here. It's good to go over stuff.
Fantastic. For reference there, Jack used to play competitively in Ninth Age, which is the version of fantasy that still hung around after Games Workshop tried to, finish it off rather cruelly.
UK's #1 Ninth Age podcast, self-proclaimed.
Excellent. Fantastic. And Paul, how are you doing, Mr. 4?
I am very well. Yourself?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. It's been nice weather. I haven't fallen off any more moving vehicles, which I might get into later on. How are you? How are you doing? You off work, or are you still working at the moment?
No, I'm back at work now. Yeah, I'm making jam like the world needs it.
The world does need it.
The world always needs it.
How can I have my scones with clotted cream and jam if there's no jam, Paul?
Exactly. Feed the nation. That's our song.
Absolutely. And Lee, how are you doing?
Very well, very well. Just had a lovely bit of half term for myself as well. Just been down to London with the kids today. Minimal vomit there. Tower of London and horrible histories tours, but all good. Lovely day out.
Fantastic. Well, I'm glad that everyone's here. We have a weirdly high amount of education adjacent people in this team, I am noticing. Obviously, Chris is a teacher, Tom's a lecturer, Lee teaches. So really he's the most important of all three. And I don't know why you're not captaining the team, honestly. After meeting you for the first time this weekend, seem very adept. I think we should throw a coup. All in favour?
Thanks, Jack.
I'm not a vote. I can't vote.
Excellent. Fantastic. Well, Chris, have we got anything exciting coming up this week? Obviously, we're great at self-promotion. We do like to tell you any shows that we are doing, any videos that are upcoming. What have we got in the pipeline?
Well, I can tell you for free that we have a grand total of 0 videos in the pipeline. You are welcome. Well, there will be this in podcast form in the future. So, if you don't get to stay the whole time, then you'll be able to catch it on a repeat or on the podcast. But no, we are not really producing any videos at the moment. But let's remind everyone that in, what would it be, like 2-3 weeks now, we will be smashing down the doors of indexes, and we've got a whole host of fun ideas planned for that. But no, we are kind of, at the moment, we're just the weekly podcast.
there is another podcast coming this week. I don't blame you at all for forgetting it because I haven't talked about it at all. I haven't even talked to my co-host
Oh, it's Davey,
to see if
yeah,
he's
yeah,
still
yeah.
interested. I've just sort of assumed that things will be going on. We will be having the first episode of the Every Other Thursday podcast this week. It'll be a short and sweet 1 hour affair. We'll be talking about the reveals that we've seen for 10th edition, rating those, because as we all know, 5 sentences and a couple of data sheets is all you need to rate new rules, especially in edition that none of us have played. So we will have the objective facts here for you on Thursday. Be there or
It's
be
great
square.
content out of that. It's easy,
Absolutely.
great content out of that.
Oh, I don't know what you mean. This is important stuff, and we're really setting the record straight on what's going to be the best and what's going to be unplayable. If you have, for example, Chaos Knights, maybe just sell all your models. But we'll see how we get on. So we are here with a couple of faces that you might not have seen or not seen as much, because we have just had an event in Birmingham, a team event in Birmingham, in fact. And not only were we all here on the team, Team Alfarius, we did have a second sister team going who also did fantastically and had a great time. So we'll be going into each round as we go. And I guess the best place to start is round 1. So very quickly, round 1, we were playing against a team called North Road Gaming. Now, I'm from Durham, up in the northeast, and there is a particularly awful bit of town. Really scratty. At the bottom, it's got a Yates's. At the top, it's got a bus station. And it's called North Road. And I saw that team name, and I was like, oh, what a funny coincidence. I'm sure loads of towns have got a North Road. No, it was North Road in Durham, to which I did give them an appropriate amount of shit for, because I said, why have you gone with North Road? Every other street in Durham is nicer than North Road. But it was nice to be talking to my people instead of as nice as everyone here is from the Midlands and the South. It is nice to have a chat with someone else who doesn't really understand manners and social conventions. Northerners, as we call them, as I call myself. So Jack, do you want to tell us about North Road Gaming and the pairings?
Shall we talk about our lists first?
Oh, we could do that. That would be a great idea and something that we discussed before the podcast.
Yeah.
I was really just checking to see if you were all awake.
Well,
Well, you know what? I started with Jack. So, Jack, do you want to tell us about your list first?
Yeah, sure. I went with Tau. Gone with Tau Sept. Long Strike, because why wouldn't you take Long Strike if you're going Tau Sept? Then I got a Cold Star Commander fitted out with Airbus and a Domination launcher. He's just an indirect guy. Got a tanky Crisis Commander, 2 units of strike teams for objective work. Big brick of Crisis suits. 2 stealth suits, a Hammerhead, and a big unit of broadsides with SMS. Basically, the idea of the list is a full index into indirect fire. The Cold Star Commander with the indirect's got the Precision of the Hunter, so he's quite accurate, and it's basically just there to punish stuff like Guard, Tyranids, Eldari, that sort of stuff. So that'd be a pretty solid approach to go for in teams. I had mixed success with it, as we'll go into, but that's what I was taking.
Yeah, well, if you end up playing into Tzeentch Demons, I don't think we can expect your indirect to
Intentionally.
Intentionally, yeah.
Combat,
No flame on the pairings there. Sometimes you've just got to jump on a bullet, and sometimes you jump on a bullet that you didn't realise was a bullet. But I will speak about that later on. Chris, what was your list? What were you bringing?
So I was on Yunari. A lot of the elf lists at the moment have the same kind of stuff. So it was Urinkarn, then some casters, Dire Avengers, Striking Scorpions, Howling Banshees, Rangers, Shroud Runners, D-Cannons, all the general stuff, and then a Harlequin Light Patrol. So you get the Troop Master that runs really far and does absolutely nothing, and then the Death Jester that is quite good at shooting and either does nothing or makes your opponent cry because it's so broken. With the added caveat that whenever it's charged, it can run away 6 inches, which causes issues for quite a few armies out there.
Fantastic. Yeah, it is, as you might expect, your usual Eldar bullshit. Anyone who's talked to me knows that I'm a firm believer in Burn the Elf. That continues even if he's on my team. I did say to one of Chris's opponents, I hope you beat him, which is maybe not the attitude you bring to teams, but it was the attitude that I brought to teams.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much, Chris. Paul,
Hello.
Paul. You were smashing the scene. You were playing Dark Angels to great success, and then they went and took your toys away.
They
But
did.
you've got new toys. You
I got
brought
new
different toys. You're one of the only people to still play Dark Angels competitively and make me not sad about it. What were you bringing?
Right, yeah. So I went for a sort of a more sort of mixed list, I guess, a bit of everything. So I've got Azrael, the Warlord. Got to bring him, new model, and he's fantastic. 4 up in Vanora, 2 extra CP, and he's a bit of a beat stick. Got double Talon Masters. One's got Rights of War for Obsec Aura. The other one's got Arbiter's Gaze, always hits on 2s. And I gave him Storm of Fire for a little bit of spice, which is the core units in 6 inches on 6s to wound do an extra AP. Standard unit of 5 infiltrators, bit of forward deploy or deep strike deny. 2 units of blade guard, 1 of 5, 1 of 3. Had a big 10-man brick of terminators with thunderhammer storm shields, missile launchers. I had the blade guard ancient with the -1 damage relic. I had the just a bare bones Ravenwing apothecary, bit of feel no pain, bit of resing, fast moving, cheap character. Just a bog standard cheapo attack bite with a multi melter. 2 land speeder tornadoes, assault cannon multi melters, and then a normal land speeder with just a multi melter. And then the nice new little spicy sauce is the thing that I don't think anyone's quite clocked onto just how good they are yet. So after this, they might become the new meta. But I brought 2 units of 5 desolators.
What?
Both of the Bangalore.
Crazy.
What? Not
One of
like
them
that.
was master drafted.
We haven't been seeing those. It is very lucky that we're coming to the end of the edition because I'm concerned as to what the game would turn into if everyone realised that Desolation Marines, potentially with an upgrade to make one of them damage 3 on the captain's weapon that would hit on 2s. I am concerned that that could make the game quite unfun to play. But fortunately, like you say, nobody's worked out.
I had great fun with them.
Yeah, I'm sure your opponents
At
had
no
a
point at
fantastic
any
time
game
as
did
well.
I ever not be sad about saying super crack.
Going into the I find I'm always happy when my opponent steps out of cover to shoot me, and then they shoot me and I go, hold on, I thought I'd have stuff to shoot back with. It's not how it tends to go. Those super cracks are pretty super. And speaking of someone else who's super, Lee, someone that I think first really talked to this weekend. It was an absolute pleasure. You were very kind, and I sent you around the hotel to find your car keys after I was having a meltdown because I'd left my phone somewhere, and you managed to find it for me. You drove me around. Far too kind to me, honestly. What were you bringing with you this weekend?
My Astra Militarum Born Soldiers army, where I can shout pew pew, push little Tonka toys around the table, and have a lovely time. So yeah, I last dusted this army off after painting up from the last tournament, which was the International Teams Tournament. Normally I'm an Emperor's Children player, but they're shit at the minute. So I like to win things as well. So that's when we just get the guard out and destroy people. But yeah, this one is pretty standard. It's standard stuff. So you've got your Lord Solar, you've got your command squad, a little bit of spice with an officer of the fleet, 25 points that I could have just left at home because it did nothing for me all weekend. A Krieg Marshal, in a Chimera with some Kaskin friends. We had 2 lots of Kaskin, 3 Cadian shock troops, some scout sentinels, some armoured sentinels, 3 plasma cutioners, some were flamers, some were bolters, and loads of mortars, which again underperformed dramatically throughout the weekend because they didn't have really any good targets. So I live and learn, but it was still a decent list. It did me some kindness throughout the weekend.
Absolutely, and you had some.
Oh no! Can't forget Slime Arbo. I forgot
Slime
about
Arbo.
him because he's always lurking in the shadows. So
It is funny. I completely didn't respect Slime Arbo, but then occasionally I'd look over your table and he was just doing things that were useful. I was like, oh, okay, maybe I need to give this a second look. He's a scary boy. Fantastic. And just to quickly run through, I was playing Defenders Emperor's Chosen, which I expected to have a lot of very close games, and that is not what happened all weekend. I was playing MSU out the arse. I had 3 units of 3 Wardens with spears, 3 units of 3 Sagittarian with guns. I had Trajan doing all of his good stuff. I had a Shield Captain on jet bike with a single salvo launcher, because that, you've got to have some anti-tank. I had a Dreadnought, the Achilles Dreadnought with the spear. He started in Deep Strike every game, mostly to make my opponents play more honestly, make sure that they couldn't just step out and leave me a nice charge into them. A small squad of Witch Seekers, which is great into the Elf matchup in case I have to burn the Heretic. And I think that was about it. Single squad of Guard as well. Just, MSU, lots of squad of 3. It's hard to wipe them off the table in 2 turns. Unless you're in round 5. But teasers, we'll be talking about that one later on. Had a great time. Fantastic. So, slightly out of order, but as I was saying, North Road Gaming, terrible name, great people, and we played them in round 1. Tell us about it, Jack.
Yeah, sure. So looking at the matrix for this one, they had Admech, Chaos Knights, Iron Hands, Death Guard, and Demons. Looking at those, pretty much all of us had a good matchup into the Admech. All of us, bar the Unari, had a good matchup into the Chaos Knights. We were a bit mixed into the Iron Hands, but generally quite level. Death Guard, again, was generally quite high, just the Custodians, I didn't want to play that one. And then the Demons, which was on the low side, but a couple of people that could play it. So the general approach that I go to for pairings when we look at stuff is you want to get the kind of rough matchups out of the pairing first. So in this one, it's Demons. So we did a 5-point pairing system with 5 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. Definite loss, small loss, draw, small win, big win, safe win, I guess. So Demons having a 1, a 2, a 2, a 4, and a 4. We just want that out of the matrix as quickly as possible. In addition, we want to put something down first defender that's not going to have a bunch of bad matchups and just immediately get roasted. You don't want that. Which for this purpose, make Custodies the ideal choice to go down. Custodies is a great all-comers list, as I'm sure Ed will say. So it makes a great defender. And in this case, only had the 1 bad matchup with Death Guard, so we could guarantee avoiding that. And if our opponents put down the other bad matchup that they had, Demons, we could take that out of the matrix and protect both the Unari and the Tau from it, which were generally more attacker lists. So that's what we started with.
Excellent. And then we all nailed it. Obviously, Jack nailed pairings all the time. It'd be like, right, it's this. Jack, what do I do now? And obviously, in the past, for me as captain, it's been kind of just like trying to work it out on the fly. But Jack's there, he's hiding the stuff on the spreadsheet, and I'm just sat there going, just like, okay, what do I do now? And he was just like,
I remember mostly seeing Jack with the matrix spreadsheet up doing this.
Yeah.
when he wasn't quick enough to hide the things, he would sit there. And
You say not quick enough, you mean too drunk too. Yeah, no, I mean, the thing about pairings is you can sit there and do pairings all day long. And as flattering as it is for you to say that I smashed the pairings, that you can't really do good pairings unless you have good predictions. And one thing I will say is everyone had pretty much spot on predictions for the entire event, and that is just absolutely essential for doing these. Now, that being said, sometimes accidents happen, and that is to be expected. But that's why you pair for. You kind of want to pair yourself to have no bad matchups and only like draws and small wins and like an even number of small losses, because it's easier to tell someone to push for more points rather than if they're in a drawish matchup. Then if they're in a bad match and be like, yeah, you need to get a 10 now. That's just not going to happen. So that's kind of why we do it that way round. So to continue on with the pairings, they offered us Iron Hands, and from that they did indeed offer us Death Guard and they offered us Admech and Death Guard, which is not something we were expecting. Custodies we had down as a 5, so the best possible matchup for Admech. So we took that one immediately. We offered Yunari and Dark Angels into their Iron Hands. Dark Angels had a good matchup into it, one of our few. And Yunari we had as a draw. But the kind of ace in the hole we had for this matchup was the Yunari, because we thought that most people would think that Iron Hands have a good matchup into Yunari. But Chris has played the matchup enough times that he knows how to get a draw out of it. So our opponents on North Road took that one. So that gave us a 4 and a 5 off the first pairing, and took Iron Hands and Admech out. I said about Iron Hands, they were a bit of a middling to bad pairing, so that was good to take out of the matrix as well. Second round, they offered Chaos Knights, we offered Guard, then they offered Demons and Death Guard into our Guard, and we offered Tau and Dark Angels into their Chaos Knights. So from there, we took the Talon to the Chaos Knights. There's 5 railguns in that list. It's not ideal for the Chaos Knights. We thought we'd take that one. Also, very good leadership on Tau. We had they chose the Death Guard to play into our guard, and then that left Dark Angels with Demons, which gave us 4 4s. So we paired into a 5 and 4 4s, which is quite unusual. Generally, if you have a matrix like that, where you're like way above, it's like the other team has a completely different idea of the matchups. So it can be a little bit scary. Like, it looks good on the surface, but experience has told me it's like that can be the scariest pairing. Because if you've just all got all the pairings wrong, considering this was the first game that I have with you guys, I had no idea what how accurate the pairings were going to be, and I was like, oh no.
Do not know what they're talking about.
Has everyone just predicted a win? We're going to get smashed. But yeah, that's how the pairings went. So.
Yeah, some of us gave accurate pairings, some of us gave less accurate pairings, and I just want to quickly touch on, some of us gave 4s for every pairing. Paul, hero of the Imperium, hero of 6++ Alfarius, was there to fill the gaps in the Matrix, because he was just like, yeah, put me down as a 4 for that, and he was pulling through. He was getting, close to decent wins into things that, well, it's hard to say maybe shouldn't have done, because who plays that sort of list? Paul does, and Paul obviously.
Paul was the only
plays
player
it well.
to meet his prediction in every single game.
Apart from the last round, I think.
Well, yeah,
But we'll touch on that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the rounds that count.
Sure. Lovely stuff. All right, so how about Chris? Do you want to give us a quick run through of your first game?
Yeah, so I was playing into Iron Hands. It wasn't necessarily the standard list. It didn't. It had a few slight changes there. He was used to playing into Eldar that I think probably showed themselves a bit more. So he went first, had nothing to shoot at, and then it was like, well, I can't shoot anything, so I'll just stop and go over to you. So I'm like, okay, fair enough. So I just start doing my movement. And he just sits there and goes, oh God. I'm like, what's up? Totally forgot to fire my Desolation Marines. I'm like, okay, well, shall we go back and let you shoot your Desolation Marines then? And yeah, so basically for 2 turns, I didn't really let him shoot anything, and kind of just gave him what I wanted while scoring my points. It was, because it was secure missing artifacts, it was a bit harder to get a consistent holding of the objectives, because one was out in the open and he was approaching down the open side quite quickly. So I wasn't able to build as big a gap as possible, but as we got to turn 4, I was able to kind of kill enough stuff that I was now pushing up and kind of dealt with all the issues. And it felt like quite a messy game. I don't feel like I got it right, but I kind of did enough. So I won 85-74, which was a 12-8 win.
Fantastic, really good showing. Only dropped 8 points. I'm sure the rest of the boys, probably struggled there as well. Surely, maybe we'll touch back at that one at the end of the round.
That is meeting your prediction, though. That is meeting your prediction, which is the most important thing.
Exactly. Thank you, Jack.
But I've got to be able to give you shit about something.
Suck up.
Lee, how was your game?
So I played the lovely Sean Temple. Great guy. He was playing Death Guard. Lots of Plague Marines. The lesser spotted Mortarion as well made an appearance. And I think Sean admitted quite openly that he'd not had any practice into Guard, and he hadn't really played the new Guard either. And that's where poor old Sean got unstuck a little bit, because he didn't realise how potent the banner would be, ignoring Mortarion's Feel of Pain and things like that. So his army was front and centre on the line, all ready to go. He got first turn, brought them out, didn't particularly use the cover, just a wave of Death Guard slowly advancing up the board. Mortarion jumped on the middle objective, and without his layers of buffs to stop him being shot, or stop him taking the damage, he ate a load of Kassakin and mortal wounds and then was gone, as was a lot of his Plague Marines. So it was short but sweet. Again, so lovely guy. It was just his inexperience into Guard made him probably play a little bit too aggressive with his units, and then they got pew-pewed, and that was the game really.
I was playing next to you. Did you kill Mortarion from 18 wins to 0 with 1 unit of Kassakin? on turn
It wasn't just one unit of cascade, but pretty much most of the wounds were the cascade. Well, I can say when you've got when they've got brutal strength as their as well as born soldiers, and they're firing 3 shots per gun. You've got a lot of shots. You've got the 6 mortals, and you've got high AP. So he's just taking 4-ups, and yeah.
It's something you really have to see to understand how much damage that squad does. Fortunately, it'll be going away soon, and I'm sure they won't be printing anything like that for Guard in 10th edition. I'm looking forward to much more reasonable damage coming from them.
That's after they've been neutered as well. That's without their 18 mortal wounds flying around the board.
And the world breathes a sigh of relief, and I don't think anyone sheds a tear for those poor Guard players. Fantastic. Paul, how was your game?
Oh, I had a great game. I was playing a lovely guy called Tom Wilkinson. He was obviously playing his Chaos Demons. He had what I'd call a smorgasbord of everything. So we had the Unkillable Bloodthirster, we had a Change Caster, the Lord of Change, Impossible Robe, and it was like just lots of little MSU, Bloodletters, Blue Horrors, Demonettes, Beasts of Nurgles, Fiends, Flamers, all the little... He even had some Flesh Hounds, and a Burning Chariot, that legend, and a Skull Cannon. That was the best one. Never see a Skull Cannon. So it was nice to see one of them table. Yeah, so that one, basically, it started off, I can't remember if I went first or second. Let me just check. Where's my list? Yeah, so I went first. I basically put all my buffs on my Terminators and just threw them into the middle. I basically got everything that could see and to shoot at the Bloodthirster to try and take the 8 wounds off him in the phase. And he just made all of his 4-up saves. I think I did 3 wounds to him in that one turn of shooting with everything firing into him. Obviously, all the out of line of sight shooting went off to try and start chipping down his big 10 wound blobs. You get max blast against him with D3 shots. And then his turn, the Bloodthirster comes charging into the Terminators, kills a few of them. They do the full 8 wounds to him, and then subsequent turn on my turn, I kill him, I think. And then it was just a case of my Desolators were literally just between the Desolators and the 2 Talon Masters. I was just deleting units for fun. Anything that came anywhere that I could see them, Talon Masters were killing them. Anything that was hiding out of line of sight, Desolators were killing them. And I think it then just spiraled out of there and ended up with quite a comfortable win. I mean, it was still a good fun game, but it was an 18-2 win. So I was very happy with that one.
Not a bad showing at all. Jack, how did you fare in round 1?
Well, I was up against Ben, playing his Chaos Knights. So upon speaking to Ben, he seemed to have an issue with the terrain. It seems that wherever he plays locally, kind of uses a modified UKTC. And so he kind of struggled to find anywhere to put his Knights. He put one in reserve, the one with the big relic laser cannon. And then he had another one, the Abominant, on the board, and as well as his 7... Armigers. There we go. Yeah, Armigers.
War dogs. That's the right word.
Yeah. He was able to hide 3 of them, and 4 of them were exposed. I rolled for the first turn, which I got, and on the first turn I killed a knight and got his Abominant down to 5 wounds, thanks to just long strike and broadsides. He ran at me. My turn comes. I kill 4 more Armigers.
That is brutal.
And I was able to finish off the 5 wound knight. His turn comes around. He gets a charge with one of his D3 plus 3 damage to claw armigers. He charges it into long strike, and it's kind of like his opening into the game, because if he gets that, he can do some consolidation shenanigans and get into the broadsides and stuff like that. But I decided that I'd just roll a 6 on the Overwatch and kill him stone dead instead with the railgun. So you know, yeah, better to be lucky than good in that case, because I did kind of leave him an opening there. But yeah, at that point, the Coleslaw Commander was just, because he had all indirect damage, strength 4 and 5, it was doing nothing, so he just took his Onager Gauntlet out and started punking knights. He killed 4 of them across the game, or 4 armigers across the game. But on turn 4, he had 1 armiger left on 1 wound, and the Desecrator, I think the knight's called, on the centre. I was able to kill both of those. I killed the Desert Courier in the center. He used the strat to get back up. I charged it, killed it again, and then that's all he had left. So I scored the Tau 100, which is 97, the max we can score. Yeah, it left it as he got 40 points off of me, so that was a 20-0 for me.
Very nice, very nice. So just to recap, that was an 18-2 from Lee, an 18-2 from Paul, a 20-0 from Jack, and my game was into Amber. We had a fantastic time. Amber, I think, a little bit more of a newer player. She said she'd only played 10, 12 games of 9th edition, something along those lines. She went first, moved a fair chunk of her army into the middle of the board, and I wasn't expecting this. Had to use Trajan to reorder my Katars, went into Rendax, the one that's good against vehicles, made some charges, killed some stuff, wrapped and trapped, and then I was at a point where she was unable to shoot anything, and I had all of my army staged to make more charges in turn 2. So that was a pretty quick blowout there, which was a 20-0 as well. So just to summarize there, really fantastic. A couple of 20-0s, a couple of 18-2s, and then a 12-8. I think that was really letting down the side there, Chris.
Yeah, I know. It
You
really
dropped
did.
double the points of the rest of the team.
I can only
My favourite part here was the rest of us had finished our games, and none of us had told Chris how we'd done. So Chris was sweating there right up until the last couple minutes of the round. We're like, should we tell him that we've all like 20 or 18s? Like, nah, we'll just let him keep sweating for that 12.
good luck. Cheers.
But yeah, lovely round. We came out 88-12, I think it was. So a great start. There was another team that had outperformed us. They were, I think, 90-8, which was a really strong showing. But yeah, fantastic. So coming into round 2, as with all sequels, we had a team with a fantastic name, and it was Try Hard 2, Try Harder, which is just a great name for a team, especially facing them on the second round. It felt very thematic.
I think it was only outdone by the other team, which was Try Harder with a Vengeance.
That was, yes, also a good name. But I mean, we didn't get to play into the trilogy, unfortunately, so you've got to take what you can get. So we've been talking about, correct pairings, and I've been ribbing Chris about letting the team down. We'll be getting to my contribution into this round, where I thought I knew how something was going to go and it didn't. Do you want to give us a quick run through the pairing process on this one, Jack?
Yeah, absolutely. So they had Demons, GSC, Ynnari, Space Wolves, and World Eaters. As will become a running theme in this, Demons were kind of rough for us. I imagine Demons are rough for everyone. GSC, we had a mix. Some people could handle it, some people couldn't. We had Guard and Dark Angel with a 4, Ynnari and Tower with a 2 into that one. I put myself as a 2 because I've not played against GSC before, and they're notorious for just punking people that don't know how to play against them. So I didn't want to risk that one for myself. So balanced, but a bit swingy. Ynnari we had good matches across the board for. Space Wolves on the low side of draw, as was the same for World Eaters. So the goal here was more to take the Space Wolves and possibly the Demons out of the Matrix. It seemed unlikely I could get them out, but we'll see what we could do. So we open with Custodies again. Again, Custodies just became the default choice, just because they're so flat in their matchups. They tend not to have anything like too polarizing. So we were able to put that down again, and then they offered us World Eaters as their defender. Makes sense, they score very well passively, so it's a good defender army as well, with an option to push. We offered Dark Angels and Guard into that, and they offered Space Wolves and Demons into us. So we decided to take the Space Wolves out of the Matrix, because the Demons again was kind of rough for the Custodies. So we'd rather give the Custodies a good matchup, because they had a 4 down. Chris put them down as a 4. And then take the rough, because that was our only 4 into Space Wolves. We thought, we'll take that out of the Matrix. That's excellent.
Just a little bit of context there. I've obviously played into Chris Radford a lot, who is a fantastic Space Wolves player. And I feel like I know how Space Wolves play. And I thought, this is a matchup that I think is probably quite close. My strats are quite good in Space Wolves. They've got units. But I really know how that army plays in and out. So no worries. I can take this. I think my knowledge of it pushes it up to, a bit of a win for me. And that was what I put it down as. If you want to continue there before we get back to my shame.
So we put Guard into World Eaters. We had that as a draw matchup. Seems fine, makes sense to me. I don't know this matchup at all. I am still fairly new to 40k. Matchups aren't my speciality. I just move the numbers about. You tell me what the numbers are. So Guard seemed to score passively, so that seemed like fair enough. So that was a draw matchup. So yeah, we took Space Wolves and World Eaters out of the Matrix, which is pretty good for us, as well as securing a good matchup for the Custodes. So we then both teams offered their Yunari. Interesting thing about the second defender in 5-man teams is that's basically the role of like you're the precious baby. We're going to protect you. We're going to give you the matchup you want. So that's like the coveted spot of we're going to look after you. We're going to pair for you. So into that they offered Demons and GSC, and then into their Yunari we offered Dark Angels and Tau. We decided to put Yunari into their Demons because that was a draw matchup. We had a 1 and a 2 in there. We didn't want to give a rough matchup there. Put Tau into Yunari, had that down as a 4. My list is designed to fight low toughness stuff, and I had just come off the back of a practice game with Chris, so I was fairly confident I could get the better of that matchup. And then we had Dark Angel into GSC. It was one of one of Paul's many 4s, and it was kind of what was left. So I didn't really mind. It felt like no matter what I do, Paul just seemed to get a 4 in his pairings. It's so weird how that happened. No matter what I did, it just kept getting those 4s.
That's how it works.
So yeah, Custodians and Space Wolves, Guard into World Eaters, Yunari into Demons, Tau into Yunari, and then Dark Angels into GSC, which is a 4, a 3, a 3, a 4, and a 4, which is sort of more what I would expect from a even Matrix.
Fantastic, yeah. So some good matchups there. I think we generally felt quite good about that one. As I was going to my table, Chris did pull me and say, "We're looking for a win from you here." Genuinely did say that to me, and I was like, "Okay." I now feel like maybe I've oversold it, but it's fine. I can get like a 12 or a 14 or something. So I'll start off because I shit the bed. Basically, I did not respect how many units that the list had. I know what the list does, but I've typically played it with shooting armies. And a shooting army into a melee army plays significantly differently. Even though they've got so many units to activate into me, and I've got to be careful, I can still, split my fire and pick up more things than my opponent's comfortable with, yada yada. So I played Sam Nash, who is a very good player. I had heard of him beforehand, so I was a little bit at that point going, maybe this was a bad choice, but it'll be fine. I'm sure, I know how Space Wolves play. I made some. I think my decision making was mostly okay. I staged in the ruins. He made some charges. His Wolfen kind of bounced a little bit because of my strats. He killed a grand total of 3 wardens, which I wasn't too worried about. Left me with plenty of stuff that I could go out. And I sent my Venatari out to kill a second unit of Wolfen. I felt like if I've dealt with a second unit Wolfen, I am okay. As a melee army, I can take the swing back and then I can kill him. Wolfen famously fight on death, so it's very hard to trade up into them. He can, if I make charges into Sam's army, he can interrupt in one place, his Wolfen can sweep another unit, and suddenly I'm left with a lot less stuff than I should have on my own turn. So I wanted to get rid of those. I did unfortunately fail a 5-inch charge with a reroll, which was not great. And it was that point that I saw, my 11 to 9, if I'm being optimistic, or maybe like a 9 to 11, something along those lines, turn into a 0-20. That was the point where I realized, oh no, because I had staged a lot of stuff and I was using that Venatari charge to neuter the Wolfen and to protect myself. And then I was going to tag the other unit that was in there and everything was going to be grand. So when I didn't make that charge, what happened was, predictably, the Wolfen came out. Also, key to note, I was planning on the Wolfen killing the Venatari on the swingback, which would have been great, because if I'd done that, he wouldn't have been able to make the charge that he did make with his character. Space Wolves, for those of you who don't know, have a Warlord trait where your Warlord gets advance and charge, and once you've made a successful charge, everyone in an aura around you gets advance and charge. So it's something you really want to avoid in the matchup. It makes them a lot faster into you. And I was like, cool, he's not going to be able to advance and charge into me and then next turn get charges because, the models he'd charge into would be dead. This is perfect. It's worked out. It didn't work out. In my next turn, I was now swinging for the fences. I was trying to pull back as many points as possible. I realised I'd lost the game. I was like, cool, I've got to scrape as much as I can. This is a team. I can't just, go out kicking and screaming. So I sent Trajan up. He was going to get me some behind enemy line points. He was going to scrape me some no prisoner points. He was going to be a bit of a threat, a bit of a nuisance. Hopefully tie up the Desolators specifically. He failed a 6-inch charge with a reroll. This was not what lost me the game. I'd lost the game already, but this was really insult to injury. And
When you're down.
yeah, it didn't get any better than that. Basically, the game ended at... I did manage to scrape it back a little bit, and I got a 119, which is
Respectable.
something. I was sat there going, I've lost this round for the team, because I was so wrapped up in trying to work out how to win or pull back the defeat from my game that I was not paying attention. Fortunately, it wasn't quite as dire as I thought. So, Paul, how about your floor? How was your floor matchup this round? Oh,
Just
sorry.
before we
yes.
go into Paul's game, just as a side note for anyone doing teams, if you have a situation where you're like predicting a win or a draw or something like that, and you just like everything goes wrong and you get a 1 or a 0,
Shit the bed.
yeah, shit the bed. Even though it sucks, the most important thing you need to do at that point, once you realise that's going to happen, you need to take the walk of shame to your captain. You need to tell him you're getting a 0, because from there, or your coach if you have one, because they can inform the rest of the team how to play accordingly. Because your draw games might need to push at that point, or your win games might need to go make into like points denial mode for their opponent. And yeah, as Ed says, playing for even 1 point is absolutely worth it. It's not that hard. You only have to get at most the 55 in order to get 1 point, and 1-2 points they can absolutely swing around. So it's always worth going into. Sorry,
It worked out.
disrupt.
No, it worked out very well because the 2 times I shit the bed, I was stood next to Chris, picked my tables very carefully there, so that was good. Didn't have far to go. Back to you, Paul.
Yeah, so I played against James March, lovely guy. He was bringing GSC good stuff. So he had about 1,000 different characters that all did their own unique, fancy little stuff. He had about 100,000 neophytes. He had the big 3 bricks of 10 bikes all loaded out, and then a unit of 10 pure strain gene stealers. So basically, he gave up all the assassinate, all the no prisoners. So I was like, cool, what secondaries do I take? I know, assassinate no prisoners. And then, because it was the first of the 6 mission objective ones, it was the data scry salvage. I was like, shock tactics, let's take that one. He's got to sit on at least 2 objectives, maybe even 3 to score any primary. I'm just going to, if he doesn't do that, I'm winning on primary. And if he does it, I'm shock tacticing him off it every turn that I can. As it went, I went first. He put all his blips down. I basically sort of moved my army up, jumped onto a couple of the objectives, staged to get onto the 3rd objective that's sort of to the right to my deployment zone. And I was like, right, okay, you can reveal your army. And needless to say, there was 30 bikes halfway across the board. And then he had a couple of characters in his back rune and a couple of characters in the L just in front of it. And I was sitting there, I was thinking, you are these characters protected? He was like, no, there's nothing nearby. I was like, so I can shoot them? And he goes, well, yeah, if you can see them. I was like, but I've got Desolators. He goes, oh, yeah. And I was like, did you want to move things? He was like, no, that's my mistake. I've done it. I was like, okay, that's fine. I was like, I'm going to shoot your characters now. So I proceeded to desolate. I took out the banner guy that reses the models. I was like, because I don't want any of that jank where I kill like 9 of them and then he passes his morale and then 3 more jump forward and jump onto an objective. And the game proceeded where I basically was just max shotting Desolators and Talon Masters into his big blocks of anything that came down. He would jump onto an objective. I would put a unit on there, shoot it off, get my shock tactics, and then I'd shoot off what was ever on the 4th objective and go, you'll get a 0 in primary. And I proceeded to do that for 5 turns. And I maxed out all my secondaries. So yeah, it was a 135 win to me. Unfortunately, it was quite a strong showing.
Brutal.
Which was fantastic because we absolutely needed a strong showing after my my game there. So back to, I think, maybe the only sort of slightly harder pairing that we had expected going in, given that you had reported your scores more correctly than me. How was your game, Lee?
Difficult on many levels. So I was playing into Tristram Allen again, absolute gentleman, lovely guy. We both got really anxious during this game, which was quite funny. It was like I was actually in the trenches with my army, and he was the berserking horde coming across the board at me. It was quite tense. We were kind of both quite nervous because we didn't really know what was going on in the other tables, and it was a close game. But yeah, absolutely lovely guy. So it was a difficult one for me. I've never played World Eaters, don't know enough about their rules. In the matchup, I was like, right, what do we know? We know that if I get anywhere in his charge ranges, that's a bad thing. He's going to be tagging everything I own, consolidating, piling into other tanks, and that would be the end of the game. So I'm going to have to sit back a couple of turns, shoot as well as possible, and try and get rid of some of his resources before I can actually come out and start holding objectives. And on Data Scry Salvage, there's loads of objectives. His passive scoring was way and above what I could achieve. Inflexible, brilliant, I could probably get 15. Boots on the ground, my list is only designed with only 3 lots of Cadian Shock Troops and some Kassakin to probably score somewhere between 8 to 12 on a really good matchup. So then I've got the third objective. Can't take banners because everything I could banner equals a charge into myself. So I was really struggling with my final secondary. So I had to take, actually what did I take? We'll come back to that because I can't remember. But I had to stretch the board, I had to hide in the corners and try and find shooting lanes, which I did. I killed a lot of his stuff, but found out World Eater's passive scoring relies on you killing his stuff. The game probably came down to 2 big moments. One, when I got a Rhino, which was holding an objective down to 1 wound, and then Tristram, I think he saved around 16 saves on a 3-up, and was left on 1 wound, securing that objective, gaining some primary points. And another where I left 1 Berserker to charge into with my Sentinels with chainsaws to get myself onto an objective and remove him, and again failed a 4-inch charge. Again, lots of points. So I think it ended, was it a 12-8? I think possibly a 12-8. But he definitely deserved the win. I think it was my lack of knowledge and understanding of the scoring and possibly the 8-bound and all the things that they could do really kind of threw that one out of my comfort zone.
It was a 13-7, but yeah, you played it exactly
13-7.
the right way. You just stay away from them as much as possible, like you said, and just try and whittle them down as quick as possible. But like you said, their secondary scoring is absolutely insane, and as long as they're standing on an objective, they're getting primary, and at the same time, every time you kill them, they're getting points for it. So it is a very difficult. They will always score well. I think it's hard to get them. It'd be hard pressed to 20-0 World Eaters, I think, unless you absolutely smash them with bodies of orcs and things like that.
I found it very difficult as well because I think you said on turn 1 some of them had a 30-something inch charge range, and people jumping out of rhinos could have an 11-inch disembark. So with the staging,
you can move 2 units as well.
Yeah, and with the staging that you can have on Data Scry from behind those small ruins with 8-bound and things like that, it means you can never leave your deployment zone unless you push right into a corner because you close that distance. Difficult,
but a close game. It's quite a fun one when you've got 2 armies that are diametrically opposed like that. You don't want to get close; you want to shoot. He wants to only get close and not get shot. It is a difficult one when you fall out of the parameters you've set yourself. The other one that we had scored a sort of like a close game. Chris, how did your game go?
So yeah, this is a really interesting one. I played a little bit into Demons before, but this actually was a Monster Mash list. So he had Be'lakor, he had the Unkillable Bloodthirster, he had Lord of Change, and he had the Keeper of Secrets. And the thing with that list is it actually doesn't leave much room for anything else. So he had a couple of 3-man Flamer units, a unit of Demonettes, and then 2 10-man Pink Horror Blobs. He doesn't actually have that much a great ability to hold objectives. I don't have a huge amount of obsec, but I have enough to build up kind of an advantage early on. So I was worried about how am I going to kill all of these big things, because we know Be'lakor's really hard to kill. the Lord of Change is going to be really hard to kill. Alex is really worried about this game. Alex is like, this was the one matchup I really, really didn't want. I'm like, okay, well, you never know. We never know how it goes. And basically what happened was I got first turn, and there was this Keeper of Secrets sat in the middle of the deployment zone. I was like, that's quite a juicy target because Eldari have a strat to reroll hits and wounds. So I did a bit of Plink Fire. The 5 striking Scorpions went in. Boom. No more Keeper of Secrets. So that was a very strong start. Meanwhile, on the left flank, I've been able to put 2 units of Shroud Runners and a Star Weaver to shoot down an angle into his 10 Demon Nets. So I've now wiped away just kind of like one flank for free. And immediately, because Unari are obviously very good if they go first at putting that forward pressure on, it just really held him back. And from then on, it was kind of like, I think I've kind of got this in the bag really, because he's never, for quite a few turns I can stop him from scoring any primary, because I've got Harlequin units to throw away. I've got a flank sorted now to score my behind enemy lines all the time. And he started pushing forward, but I did the 16 wounds I needed to the Bloodthirster in turn 2, so when it came out, we got to go and kill 3 Shroud Runners, and then that died. And the game kind of ended with him having 10 pinks and a Lord of Change just sat in one corner. But he wasn't going to be able to get to close to 50, so the game finished 94-35. So I regained some honour and got my 20-0.
Yeah, it's one way of saying it. The other way of saying it is you also absolutely bailed my arse out. So big thanks there. And finally, Jack, how was your round 2?
Yeah, so my opponent, his name's Matt, Ben Unari. He was basically running almost the exact same list as Chris. I think the only difference is he had a Shadows here and there. I'm not sure if Chris has one of those. But it's basically the same other than that. So it started out, he forward deployed kind of aggressively. I got the first turn though, so he phantasmed some of it back, and there was some jankery. And the way he played this, he was kind of obsessed with getting behind enemy lines and Warp Ritual out, to probably the detriment of his overall game. He kind of tunneled on it a little bit. So what ended up happening was his, I think it's a Warlock on a Skyrunner on a bike, ended up jumping out, doing the Warp Ritual, and then quickening back, but behind a building where nothing was there. So I could just indirect him, and I was like, okay. I was trying to ask, like, is there anything I can? You got the power from the Shadow Seer? No. Okay, I guess I'll just shoot him then. And I completely whiffed it and did like 2 wounds. And I'm like, damn, that was a really good opportunity. Really sad to let that go. So he came out, he does Warp Ritual again, quickens him, and goes back into the same spot. Like, okay, so I guess I'll just not move and shoot him again. And I did kill him this time. I thought, cool, that's basically his easy Warp Ritual sorted. If he wants to get it, if he wants to get the last point on Warp Ritual now, he's going to have to sacrifice a load of stuff. So I didn't really mind that too much. Because I'd gone, remembering my game from Chris, I'd gone grind them down. So anytime he pokes something out like that, it gives me the option to try and shoot it down. It's a great counter behind enemy lines, basically. Which again is another thing he was going for obsessively in this game. With his 2 forward deploys, it was a unit of Rangers and a unit of Scorpions. I killed the Rangers first, and I was on it with the Incarn. I was like, are you going to put the Incarn down? No, I'm not. Cool. Did some other stuff. I was thinking about other things. I shot the Scorpions, killed them dead, and then I looked down. I was like, okay. I was like grabbing my book or something like that, and when I put my head back up, the Incarn was there, and I was like, wait a minute, he's just tried to pop up there. I don't like that. I'm like, are you sure you want him to go down? He's like, yes. I'm like, okay. These broadsides haven't shot yet, so I'm going to shoot all of them.
Go pew.
I'm going to shoot this at the Incarn. Fortunately, he had some lucky saves with the 4-ups. He still had him 5 wounds, and he charged my Crisis Brick with the Commander. And in a hilarious turn of events, for a second game in a row, the Incarn put 3 attacks onto my Crisis Commander, got 2 through, and I passed 2 5-ups, and then proceeded to kill him with said Commander. Which is exactly what I did against Chris. So You know, it's
He's
not.
a bastard. He is
Yeah,
a
yeah.
bastard, that commander.
If I had a penny for every time that happened, I'd have 2 pennies, which isn't. You know, it's not a lot, but
I
it's
think you
weird
need
to
to
happen
replace
twice.
your troop master with his commander. It seems like it does a better job.
20%.
Yeah. Well, from that point, he basically had no real combat pressure to threaten me with, and I was able to move forward very aggressively, killing characters, stuff like that. He kept throwing stuff at me to get the behind enemy lines and the warp ritual, which just let me rack up grind points. And then by I think it was turn 3, he had nothing left, so I was able to max out primary from that point and get my decisive action and aerospace maxed out as well. So I ended 92 to 61, which is an 18-2.
Perfect. Another strong showing there, and that left us 64 to 36. So that was a nice, solid win, despite my best efforts. Going into round 3, I had been doing some psyops, I guess you could call it. So in round 3, we were playing against Trash Wargaming. Now, Trash Wargaming is captained by Matt Palmer. I've known Matt for quite a while. He was my first proper competitive game of 8th edition when I got back into the hobby after like a 8-9 year breakout, and he destroyed me. He absolutely ruined me. I had some Hellblasters sat on top of a bit of Games Workshop scenery, one of those really nice buildings that you never see used in any competitive formats in 9th, and he had Gene Stealers everywhere. He'd wrapped and trapped me. He'd made me very sad. Had a great game, really enjoyed playing him, but he absolutely destroyed me. Since then, Matt and I have paired in a few events, and I wouldn't say that he's my nemesis. I wouldn't say that at all. I love playing Matt. I enjoy it. But I might be his nemesis, because I keep matching into him in the final round of events with just lists that are either good against him or just way more cutthroat. I played him at the London, the LGT RTT on Monday after the main event. He was playing a reasonably fun list after he'd taken his more cutthroat list at the main event. I was playing the same Leviathan Warriors, so that was a great time for me. We played at Coventry. I was playing Tau. He was playing Nids. It was long deployment. I got to shoot him. It was great times. So I definitely seen him around and been like, oh, so how do you pair? What, I'd love to play you again at this event. Not expecting to actually be paired into him, but then we did. So of course, as soon as we got paired into Trash Wargaming, I went over to the table and I was like, cool, Matt, you and me, we're going to have a great time. Really just dialing up the fear there, which may have led to some interesting pairings. Jack, can you talk about the pairings for round 3 there?
Should we just give a quick shout out to Vic VJ in the chat, obviously Team Ignite, and big congratulations on their win at the tournament.
Well done.
Absolutely.
Well done, Vic. Well done.
I am a little sad that we didn't pair into you in the last round. I've been saying for a long time that I'd like to play you, but now that I've put it out there into public record, maybe it'll happen.
Dreams do come true.
Absolutely. Well, I had another dream come true in round 5, but we'll get to that one as well. Jack, how did we go about pairing into Trash Wargaming?
So you have to forgive me. I think I accidentally deleted the Matrix at some point on the event. I was drinking quite heavily. That's absolutely something I could have done. So so I'm kind of missing it. From my memory, Demons was once again not great for us. We had the Grey Knights, which we have fairly solid matchups into, with the exception of myself on the Tau. We've got Grey Knights, we've got Tzeentch Demons, Guard, Custodes, Shadowkeepers Custodes, I believe it was, and Harlequins, Light Harlequins, I'm pretty sure.
Twilight. Yep.
So the main issues here were for us with the Demons. The Grey Knights, as I said, were fairly solid against. The Guard was pretty flat. Custodes, pretty flat as well, and then the Harlequins are on the good side of flat, I think. So we decided to drop the Custodes again. They're 2 bad matchups of Guard and Harlequins. If we could pull those out, it would have made us a lot happier. And then they put down Harlequins versus best of my memory. We offered them Dark Angels and Guard because we thought those would do quite well into the Harlequins. And they offered us Grey Knights and Guard, which is not something that we expected to see go down. Because Grey Knights was a one good matchup for Grey Knights.
Now, I'm not saying that I'd scared Matt into avoiding playing me, but that might be why they gave us Grey Knights. I'm just saying.
Yeah, there may have been a couple of reasons for it. They may have thought they had a different edge of the matchup. They might have thought it was drawish for them, or maybe they thought they had no good matchups with the Grey Knights, and they were just giving the bus, as it were. I'm not sure, but regardless, we took took Custodians to the Grey Knights, and then we took the Guard into the Harlequins. That's a 4 and a 3 for us. So next we put down the Yanari in the coveted second defender spot. And they put down Guard, us offering Dark Angels and Tau, them offering Demons and Custodes. So we put the Yanari into the Custodes. Chris was pretty confident in that matchup, so I was happy for that. We put the Dark Angels into the Guard, which is Paul was one of his not so confident matchups, but it's
Cool.
sometimes that's just
The
how it goes.
still.
Yeah, well, just to clarify, and not so confident, Paul had put down 4 4s and a singular 3. So
No.
Paul's less confident pairing was,
This
I
is-
think I can make this a close game.
This is a typo on my behalf. Paul actually put a 4 for Guard, and
Oh,
I
yeah,
put
for
a 1.
everyone.
Yeah, I put a 1 for Demons. So what ended up happening here was we had a choice here. We could either put the the Tau into the Custodes, and then the Dark and the into the Demons and the swap it round essentially, which would give us 2 draws and a small win. But what we decided to do instead was bust myself and put myself into the 1 matchup
You
because
say
I
we
guarantee.
decided this. You decided.
Yes, you decided to bust yourself. Yeah.
Because that gave us 2 4s for both the Yanari and the Dark Angels. Both of them have been playing really well. There's seen no reason why we shouldn't do that. And if I can get 1 point out of the most notoriously bad matchup for Tau that there is, I'll take that any day of the week. So we ended up pairing to 3 4s, a 3 and a 1, and we got the round started.
Fantastic. Do you want to just give a quick summary? You don't have to go into details if it's too scarring for you. How was your game 3?
It wasn't that bad. There was a couple of. It probably would have been like a 1 or 2 points for myself. There was just a lot of. My opponent was absolutely incredible player. I mean, I've not played against Mono Zinj Demons yet. That was the first time. So I was also in an experienced advantage. I thought I could get a couple points out of it, but there was just a couple of things like 11-inch charges being made, 40 million shots being shot from flamers, killing characters. That unfortunately just pushed me. I think it was like 3 points below what I needed for a 1, because I was missing some primary and stuff. So that was unfortunate, but yeah, I mean, it's a bad matchup. Everyone knows Tau into the Demons is a bad matchup, and Zinj Demons is even worse. So yeah, there's not really much to say. I shot and it didn't die.
Yeah, Tau into Demons is playable potentially if you've got the volume of fire, but I have yet to play into Zinj Demons and felt good about it as Tau. It's pretty miserable. But thank you very much for jumping on the sword in that game, because that did leave us with 4 very good matchups, or 3 good matchups and 1 okay matchup. I guess the matchup that we had as sort of a middling was the Guard into the Harlequins. So that was you, Lee. How did you feel that game went?
I think it was a bit of a game of resources, because obviously the Harlequins were set up to score behind enemy lines. They were looking to do Warp Ritual. No, not Warp Ritual. What's the Chris? Help me out here. Harlequin secondary, where they're doing something
Been
mentally
so
to my
long,
man.
I've forgotten already. But yeah, it's quite a good one. You can just do it on different units, and
Yeah. So so that was kind of the setup we were looking at. Whereas I had a huge amount of output, and on that board, if you manage to push out of your deployment zone to the right, you open up some decent firing lanes.
Reveal.
And it kind of
Okay.
that's the one. So the game really started out with him sending over units piecemeal to try and get into my backfield to score behind enemy lines. Obviously, each turn losing resources. I managed to cut some nice angles up in those first couple of turns as well to pop a couple of boats, which was really good as well. So I could open my mortars into some of his units. And it basically came down to me trying to just wear him down so I could Barbican's key my Kassakin into a hole. And eventually, when his unit started depleting, that hole appeared. And again, I think I popped 2 boats and killed the contents and a couple of his characters in that one turn, which was a massive change in direction for the game because he'd been scoring quite nicely in those first 2 turns. Just to give my opponent a shout out as well, that was Ben Pearce, a man with a very strong crop game and a lovely mullet to boot as well. So I just jibing him all the way through the game, saying that he should be playing first team rugby. They're out to look, but he'd never been near a rugby pitch. Very surprised, but absolutely lovely guy. So that was the big swing of the game. It was the Caskin bomb, demeching, and then the resources were gone. He had nothing to play with, and I kind of pushed through those last couple of turns and scoring some big numbers. I think it ended 16-4.
Yeah, it was a good show in there. Just piggybacking off what you said about mullets, I guess I better talk about my opponent, a lovely guy called Peter. I won't try and pronounce his last name because I will get it wrong, and I'll be very sorry if I did. Peter was also sporting a fantastic mullet, but not only did he have a fantastic mullet, he had socks that said "fuck" on them, which came up about an hour and a half in, because I don't think it necessarily changed the course of the game. It's a very rough game for the Grey Knights, but he had some very poor rolls throughout the game. And at one point he shouted, socks! And I just sort of looked at him and I was like, socks? And he pulled his foot up and socks that said fuck all over them, which I thought was the funniest thing. Because I'm an absolute toddler. So for the rest of the game, whenever anytime anything went wrong, we were just, socks. Fantastic. Absolutely recommend getting yourself some socks with fuck on them and some sandals and a mullet to complete the look. But yeah, this was, a matchup, a dream matchup for me. I was playing into a faction who really like to shoot things with low armor. They've got storm bolters, they've got AP1, they've got some AP2. It's hard for them to go above that in the shooting phase. Obviously, I'm going to be touching cover. I'm going to be having a 1-up save on most of my stuff. No worries, Grey Knights, psychic powers, put a load of smites. Well, he failed a lot of his smites, but it wouldn't have mattered anyway because I've got to feel no pain against them. So this is absolutely a matchup that I feel very comfortable in. I know how to play into Grey Knights. I've played into quite a lot of Grey Knight players. I still have the scars from the 5 Dread Knight meta. I played shooting armies into that. That was a great time. So I felt very confident going into it. Peter went first, moved out, just started staging, didn't achieve much. No, that's a lie. Sorry, I went first. I moved up stage, didn't achieve much. Then he came out, tried to answer. Nothing died. At that point, I made some long charges. I got a charge into one of his Nemesis Dread Knights. That fell apart. That meant that Trajan was on his objective, denying him points. It went from bad to worse, basically. Everything that could go poorly went poorly. I was denying him primary most turns. I was heroicing in with Trajan, slapping things for free. And just being, a real nuisance and a terrible person to have to play against. But we had a good game. So that was a 20-0, which I think I was expecting going into it. It's the only 20-0 that I was projecting for myself going into this one. Paul, how did you feel your game went?
Right, yeah. So I played into Josh Wood, and what a fantastic guy. Me and him had an absolute, well, I thought we did. He might say differently, but it felt like we had an amazing game. He was obviously playing his Imperial Guard, and when I looked at the list, it was lots of tanks with a Dawn and the command squad, Lord Leontus, some troops, and like the double Cascan with the key. I was like, cool, he's got no transports. If I go first, Desolators go, and he had the mortars, obviously, and I can hopefully pick up the things. And I was thinking, yeah, this should be quite. I think I put a 4 down, usual, for the pairings. We set up, and I was like, he was deploying. I was like, he's put all of his tanks on the front line. I was like, this is a bit of a brave move here. Obviously, we roll off to go first. He goes first, and then he proceeds to put advance or always count as remaining stationary on all of his tanks, and then proceeded to advance all of them pretty much so he could see the whole of my army. Literally, he had 2 tanks go across the top of the board, 2 of them come down the side of the board, and the Dawn just went straight across the middle to touch onto the L in my home, like in my deployment zone, to see my whole army. I was like,
Absolute Giga Chad move.
I've balls this up massively. I was like, how am I supposed to come back? So he then proceeds, and he also then teleports over his Kasakin bomb as well. And I was like, this is not going to go well. Luckily, I mean, he managed, because I had hidden quite well. He could see like my 10-man Terminator brick So they took an absolute pounding. I think I lost 6 of them. I lost my unit of infiltrators at the top of the board, and I was like, "Bugger, I'm screwed here." You know, what was I supposed to do? I've got a massive Dawn sat in front of me, so I was like, "I'm just gonna go and see as much jank as I can." And so I was like, "Cool, one land speeder's gonna fly up, and I'm gonna charge from behind the little L ruin into the middle of them, so then they're tagged in combat. I'm gonna send my blade guard to the other 2 that came down the other side." With another land speeder, and they're going to charge in and wrap one of them while tagging the other one, so they're trapped in combat. And then I put my Terminators. I spent a CP, put them in the assault doctrine, rezzed one of them, and charged them with my 5 blade guard into the Dawn. I was like, I need to kill the Dawn. That's in my lines. Let's get rid of that. Yeah, so I basically my turn. I shot and killed the Kassakin. I killed another set of troops that he had on the he'd put on the one of the other objectives, and then proceeded to absolutely annihilate the Dawn in combat with Terminators. Apparently, full rerolls to hit and wound will take out a Dawn quite easily, and he wasn't expecting that to die. I don't think he realised that. Obviously, Dark Angels, when they're in the Assault Doctrine, get reroll wounds against vehicles. So the Terminators absolutely annihilated the Dawn. I tagged all of his tanks apart from his commander in combat, and one of them was trapped. And I'd taken his primary down to 4, and that's pretty much how the game just carried on. I just kept putting everything into combat with his tanks and shooting anything that went onto one of the objectives, so he'd only score 4 primary. Because I was like, they always score really well on the secondaries. I'm sure Lee will contest to this, that they've got some very strong secondary game. I was like, if I can just neuter the primary game, that's how I can win this. So I was losing my army left, right, and centre. But I was just using what little pieces I had to tag his tanks, shoot what was on the objectives, and just kept putting him down to a 0 and 4 on primary. And yeah, ended up winning 82-50, which I was quite pleased with. I kind of ballsed up on my secondaries though. I didn't take Bring It Down because I've played into the guard before, and with their toughness 8 and most of my guns all being strength 8, it can be a very much a coin flip of whether you actually kill any tanks or not. As it happened, I killed, I think, 4 of his Lehman Rosses, which would have scored me a lot higher, but I just took banners and banners behind enemy lines and over the moment, and if I'd have took anything instead of banners, if I'd have took Bring It Down, it would have put the score up a bit, but yeah, I was happy with that one. I got what I predicted anyway, so that's all that mattered.
Absolutely, making that 4 come true. I think I've got everyone there. I'm losing the plot slightly. Anyone I haven't come to on this round? No one important. Moving on. All right, Chris. How'd you get on? I wasn't even doing a bit. I'm sorry. I was just genuinely lost track there. How did you do, Chris?
Yeah, so I went into Custodes. The things I had going for me was that I played into Ed on TTS like 3 or 4 times now, so I knew the matchup kind of pretty well. And on top of that, it was on conversion, and conversion is a mission that for some reason just clicks. I've never actually lost on, so I felt happy with that. The only issue was that this was a bit of a different Custodes list because it was Shadow Keepers. I have a little bit of mortal wound output, but not an insane amount. But I do like my combat, and -1 attack on my combat is obviously not ideal. Brant was an absolutely lovely guy. Our game went way kind of like closer to time than it perhaps should have, because we just spent so much time talking. He was like kind of asking questions. He's still kind of a bit newer to the competitive scene in terms of he's trying to make that next step up. So we were kind of like discussing options and that sort of thing, but really nice guy. It's just a really hard game to try and work out. Both players can't afford to make a silly mistake. I think overall Brant probably, as we all know, where you can play more aggressively, you want to play aggressively into the L's, you need to get into their lines quickly. And Brant went first and kind of didn't want to push out too much. He put like a little 3-man out on the middle and just said deal with it. And basically the way the game went was that I kept leaving Custodes alive on 1 wound in the middle objective, so he kept scoring primary, which was really annoying. But at the same time, a lot of his other saves were shocking. So I was able to like kind of clear up other areas of the board. But I couldn't, despite my best efforts, I could never knock him down to a 4. Kept getting that 8, which kept the score quite close. But having bottom of the turn meant that I could kind of push forward and push through eventually. And really, really enjoyable game, and I won it 93-79.
Good showing. It can be a very difficult one, especially with the Shadow Keepers really neutering your melee. But if you can get the Khan in there, she really does like
He
all
was,
those.
yeah, the Incarn's a really interesting one, because like, you take the Demons game, but the Incarn actually does not much into the big guys, because she doesn't ignore their invuln. But in the Custodies game, Brown was really worried about the Incarn. Like, that was a big thing. He was always thinking about, like, where's the Incarn going to go? And it was quite a chess match in that regard, which because the Incarn obviously ignoring the Custodian, the invulns and putting them onto 6-ups makes like a big difference, because he can really go through, or she can go through a lot of stuff, apart from Trajan, because she completely fucked that up. But other than that,
That seems reasonable. Trajan is
he's a boss,
far more of a badass. So that seems entirely fair to me.
Yeah.
No bias here from someone who's just used Trajan for the first time.
No, not at all.
Fantastic. So end of day one, we were feeling stronger. We had come out 3-0, which was not unexpected, but it was definitely nice to be hitting our stride.
Yeah.
It was great. Obviously, we were there with 6+ plus Omegan, the second team as well. They did, I believe, 2-1 on day one. They had a great day one as well. Yeah. And at that point, we all decamped to accommodation that Paul had ever so kindly booked for us. It was a little bit of a car ride away. How far away from the venue was the accommodation, Paul?
It was 8 miles.
8 miles. 8 miles.
As the crow flies, it turns out. Not as the car drives.
Depends who you ask, really. 8,000 miles if you ask some people.
Not as the tired wargamers, commuting around Birmingham, which we had some words about, and I remember you two were particularly pleased about their clean air policy, and not going into it and potentially being fined £40. So we got back to the hotel, had some food at the pub next door. I remember that everyone was particularly impressed by the chicken wings. Flavorful and delicious, I think, were the words used. Anyone want to add on to that?
I think, as I said on the night, until that point, I wasn't aware it was possible to remove flavour by cooking chicken wings. But here I have been proved wrong.
I like when it's steamed of all everything.
Yeah.
Turns out if you microwave food, it doesn't taste very nice.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to be very disappointed. Let me tell you about how most restaurants work at the moment. It is, yeah. But yes, no, I think aside from the chicken, which was a little disappointing, I know you had a fantastic looking meal, Jack. You just went for starters, which I think was genuinely a great choice.
Yeah, it's really garlic bread. I just subsisted on garlic bread for that weekend. It was great.
Yeah, weirdly, when that came out, I looked at it and I looked at the salad on the side you plate, and for some reason that made me really jealous. It looked like a nice side salad. But yeah, Paul, what was it that you ordered? I feel like you didn't have enough chicken, did you?
Yeah, so I wanted. They did a set meal thing where you could like pick a couple of items off each thing, and then for like an extra £4 you could add steak. And when we got there, they said, "Oh, we haven't got any steak left." So I was like, "Well, what would pair well with some chicken wings is another order of chicken wings." So I had double order of chicken wings.
Yep. You were the only person to do that. Was it yourself, Lee, who also doubled up on the chicken wings? Or was that Jamie? I can't remember.
Well, I had a chicken sharer for 2.
Yeah, that was it.
That was it. Additional chicken wings.
Absolutely, there was quite a lot of chicken.
I didn't want to share the chicken with anyone. I just wanted all the chicken.
Never has so many chickens died for so little.
I would like to caveat that it is a running theme that whenever we go to an event and the night after the first day, that between our team we seem to always order an obscene amount of chicken wings. I think our record was when we ordered over 100 chicken wings between about 12 people.
Yeah.
That's not actually that many each when you say it's between 12. But it's,
I mean, we were talking probably in the realm of about 140 chicken wings.
8. Anyway, chicken. Chicken was had by all. I can't remember what you had, Chris. You had me giving you shit for dinner for my mistakes.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, abuse.
Yeah, I sat next to you and just bullied you. I don't know why.
Why would you put me into the Space Wolves?
And then I'd follow up with, after I said I could beat them. Very willing to accept that I was the mistake there, but I still would like to blame Chris for it as the team leader. I feel like it's a share of his there. So yeah, absolutely. Coming into the next day, we woke up, some of us more fresh than others. We managed to get to the venue all on time, didn't have any issues there. We did some pairings as well, and this was a fun one. This was into the Winchester, which was not a team that I had heard of, but it did have some players on there that I'd heard of. So, some names that you might recognise, Bethany Taylor and Lewis Archer, who I think I saw in the chat, actually. I did
Yeah,
see
he
Lewis
was
Archer
here,
in the
yeah.
chat. Sorry, Lewis. I missed that message. Lewis said earlier that he 20-0s World Eaters with his Orcs, which seemed entirely possible. A couple of other names on there that we'll get to as we go through. He says, I am yes here. Nice to see you again, Lewis. Hope you're doing well. So this was, I think, really the first round where it felt like we were in real danger. The previous rounds, I think, once we'd got the pairings specifically, it felt a lot smoother. But this one, I was quite concerned coming in. Do you want to give us a quick run through on the pairings against the Winchester, Jack?
Yeah, sure. Just before I go into this one, I would say that based on stuff that happened on day one, I kind of resolved to make sure we had a bit more communication going on between the tables. Because one of the failings I think we had from the previous day and from the first round, as much as we joked about Chris playing on for that 12, and the second round for Lee playing against the World Eaters, it just caused a lot of unnecessary stress for the players, like to be trying to force scores when we'd already won the round handily. So this time around, I was going to make sure that everyone knows the scores. So you don't want to, because we're 3-0 on like table 3, 4 high tables. Unnecessary stress is not required. So I just wanted to resolve myself to make sure we all had as much communication and knowledge as possible, so we were allowed. So they're GSC, Demons, Iron Hands, Imperial Knights, and Orcs.
Very strong showing of lists as well.
Yes, so the GSC was fairly good for us on the good side of a draw. Demons, it was mono. Okay, was it monos each Demons against? Yeah.
Monos each.
So this time the Custodians had a 5 for it. I'm not sure, but and the Unari had a good matchup into it, but obviously I still had a bad matchup to it. After playing it, my opinion didn't change, funnily enough. Iron Hands, again, the bad side of flat, that's kind of pretty standard for Space Marines and Iron Hands. Imperial Knights we have very good matchups for. I found that across the weekend, both night matchups, anything vehicle heavy we were really good against. Between the super cracks, the railguns, the guard, and then the custodies just being custodies, having big biceps. We were able to just trash enough tanks, so knights generally weren't a worry for us. And then orcs was pretty much flat, like drawish all around. So we decided to lead with custodies again. Only the one bad matchup for custodies in this one. And that was the orcs, and they were pretty flat against the orcs. So if we could get it wasn't the worst thing in the world if we had custodians into orcs, but they had to offer us something else with it, and generally they would be things that were bad for everyone else. So that made custodians an ideal thing to go down, so we could take something crappy out of the matrix. So if we go down custodies, they put down Iron Hands, which makes sense again for the same reasons. It's pretty flat. And then they offered us Knights and Orcs, and we offered Unari and Dark Angels. So, based off this, we took the Knights for the Custodies. You might say it's a missed opportunity. We had a lot of other good matches into it, but it meant that we could be kind of free with the Unari to do whatever we want, because that takes out the last bad matchup for the Unari, essentially. So.
I was also quite vocal, I think, about wanting to play the Knights. Having played the matchup previously, I knew that it was something that I felt I could score quite highly in.
Yeah, exactly. So we were happy with that, and then they took our Dark Angels into their Iron Hands, which is a fine. You would normally predict these to be a 3s, but obviously Paul's put it down as a 4, which, to be fair, I completely understand. Having a faction specialist is always going to work in your favour in that situation. So then we put down Unari again in the safe little pocket of second defender, and they offered Demons. So we offered GSC Orcs, and sorry, they offered GSC Orcs, and we offered Guard and Tau. So this kind of left left us in a bit of a weird situation where we had to essentially give we ended up with 2 3s basically. We could have had a 2 and a 4, but we decided to take the even matchups because, as I said before, it's easier to push a draw than it is to get an even matchup out of a loss generally, or at least that's how it's worked for me in previous. I assume it's the same in 40k. But so we ended up going for that, which essentially gave us one bad matchup with Demons into guard. But overall, I was fairly happy with that. This was probably our worst matrix so far, so I was pretty happy for us to get the winning side of a draw overall on our matrix.
Fantastic, yeah. So this was, to set the scene, this was, I think, our final. This was like the big round for us. It was tense, it was tight, and there was a lot of waiting around for a couple of us to see what happened. I was incredibly stressed, and after we finished it and we were sat having lunch, I said, I don't want to play another game. I'm too, I've had enough. This is, I'm out. I've hit my level of stress. That's how it was. One game in. Lewis is saying there that our night player said the same thing about him being able to 20-0 me, which is it is inherently a bit of a swingy matchup. So yeah, what we're going to do this time is we're going to go in order of who finished their rounds first, to really set the scene.
Ramp up the suspense.
Oh yeah, ramp up the suspense. So the first to finish was myself. It was
before you
nice.
started. One more thing about the pairings I just remembered. It's kind of a cautionary tale when you're doing pairings. I don't mean this in like a disrespectful way or anything, but if you're doing your pairings, you got to be really careful what you say to your opponent when you're doing it, because if you can sometimes give away a lot of information, which kind of people who were pairing against were sort of letting us know that what they thought the matchups were they were giving us. So I was able to pair against that accordingly. So that gave us basically the one extra pairing. That's how we were able to get the 3 2s, the 2 3s, and the 2, rather than the other way around, because they just gave us that little bit of extra information. So just for anyone, again, you're doing pairings out there, obviously, I'm not saying like you got to be silent and stoic with your opponent. You can have a good time, but just be careful. Sometimes you can give away more information than you intend, and it can kind of bite you later. But again, this is a perfect example, as Lewis says in the chat. Like he had his team had them up on 10 points. So sometimes the pairings kind of don't even really matter because the teams can have different estimations of what they think is a win and a loss. So you may pair yourself into what you think is a win, but so does your opponent. So it basically comes down to who has the better idea of the pairings at the time.
Perfect, yeah, and that is absolutely why we have Mr. Tall, Dark, and Stoic doing the pairings with his human computer instead of me, the motor mouth, who probably couldn't keep my mouth shut. They'd put down a card and be like, "Oh, is it nice? I hope it's nice. I want to play nice." So yeah, that obviously wouldn't have gone very well for us if I'd been in charge. So coming into round 4, the first to finish, myself. This was Knights into Custodes. This is a fast game. No matter who wins or loses, it is a fast game. We did have a judge come over and say, just you need to have a clock on. It's the rules. You're undefeated. Round 4, you need to be on a clock. And we did look at each other and be like, we'll do it because it's the rules. But we both know this is pointless. And we finished, I think, an hour and a half into the round, maybe less than that. It was an absolute. It was speed chess, is what it was basically. So we were putting our stuff on the table. I had thought about my reserves. I almost put the Witch Seekers into reserve, which would have been a real mistake because they wouldn't have got me much. But I decided not to do it. I win the roll off to go first, and I pre-game move the Witch Seekers up. I roll to advance them. I get a 6. I'm like, oh, cool. So that's 7-inch move, 6-inch pre-game move, 6-inch advance. Cool. So I'm basically just hemming in his army turn 1. This gives me a lot of flexibility to move up and just put out some pot shots. I stage as much as I can in the ruin. It's on a Dawn of War deployment. Sit in my staging room, ruin my Sagittarium, just put some pot shots into the big knight, which I completely forgot about. It was a very nice surprise later on when I charged it, and he goes, "Cool, I've got 8 wounds left." And I was like, "Oh crap, I forgot I'd, really chipped this down." So that was nice. He came into his turn, wasn't able to do very much, and then I just went into 2 turns of Rendax, and turns out Sagittarium absolutely rip through knights when you're in Rendax. I got lots of charges off, I got lots of 6s to hit, Trajan giving rerolls, and just very efficiently picked up the models. And there's not really much to say other than Custodes go burr, and my points absolutely rocketed up and got me a 20-0. So that was a good start. I was feeling good about that, but I knew we had some quite rough pairings or more difficult pairings. And as I was having a wander down the line, I was feeling it was good that I got a 20, but there were definitely some signs that we needed a 20 to feel good about this match going in. So I was on the leftmost table. To my right, by 1 table, we had Jack. How did your game go, Jack?
Well, I was against the GSC. I had that down as a draw. Again, it's my first time playing against GSC. I was super worried about it. I was like, I cannot let these tricks and jank come out and smack me. I cannot let this. I can't let myself lose this for the team. Be super embarrassing. So I spent quite a long time on my my deployment, my movement. Basically put most of my army in the center, then used broadsides and crew hounds and stealth suits to zone out everything 6 inches in my deployment zone and in front of me as well. He could probably fit a Kellamorph in somewhere, but nothing bigger than that. And I basically readied myself for the onslaught. I wasn't really sure what I was going for, but if it was whatever it was going to come in front of me, not behind me. So my opponent had the first turn. I just grab his name. I can remember. Aaron had the first turn. And he had his 3 units of bikes. They went forward. They killed a unit of crew hounds. I hit everything else, and he wasn't really able to get much else out of me. Adam. Oh, my bad. Sorry. I said Adam. I must have typoed that or auto-corrected it or something. Yeah, so he moved super aggressively into me. He had his bikes on my home objective in front of my big ruin turn 1. So he played super aggressively into me. I had a decision turn 1. Do I move out, just go into the middle of all them, exemplar of the Monk car, reroll to wounds everything, just try and lift all the bikes? But I didn't know how much firepower I needed to kill the bikes, so I thought, no, I'm going to play it safe, stuck behind, just fire invaded out the ruin, and went out of the ruin, fire invaded back in, which just turned out to be a good idea. Kill 1 unit of bikes completely, 1 down to 1 guy on my objective, which was kind of upsetting. I decided to not go crazy and charge through there and expose myself, and just let him have the 12 for the first turn, because I just wanted to get more of his units in and not play too riskily here when I don't really know what I'm doing. Second turn, he brought, I think, 2 big units down, and decided this was going to be my go turn. So I moved out turn 2, exemplar of Monk card triggered. I was on top of one of the Ale ruins, so the crisis units could just see everything. And I racked up enough kills to get me to 13 points on no prisoners on turn 2. Pretty much everything was dead. He had 3 shooty characters in reserve, 1 20-man neophyte unit, his 2 characters, and then I think it was 3 neophytes on his home objective, because the crew hounds had run over there and been absolute heroes and destroyed half the unit on their own. Before dying a heroic death to the Primus. Adam tried to drop a few more stuff. Unfortunately, wasn't able to get much else, and he was out of stuff on turn 3. He just ran out of units. And the line of sight shooting and the ability to get from the big L ruin to one of his staging ruins with an 18-inch move from the crisis unit just meant I had so much coverage on the board that he wasn't able to stay alive, and he couldn't get enough damage into me. The one opportunity he got, he was only able to kill the crisis unit down to a man rather than the entire thing to get some points on ambush. So that one ended up 95 to 52 in my favour, which I think
An 18-2
is an 18-2. Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely. So at this point, we're feeling, well, it might look like we're doing very well. We've had a 20-0 and an 18-2, and the team.
So by my calculation, that means we need 13 points across the remaining 3 games.
Yeah.
Yep.
To also halfway through my game, Chris had come over to me and said, "I'm it told me that he's not going to make his prediction, and I had to get as many points as possible. That's when I decided on my turn to go. So I knew that those points were going to be vital that I got. So
Absolutely, and that goes back to what you were saying about communication, how it's important.
exactly.
I do want to just say as well, I got too caught up in the storytelling. My opponent was a guy called John, really lovely. We had a great time. It was just fantastic bullshitting, a little bit of dice rolling, and a good time there. So at this point, for those following at home, Tom put in the chat, it's looking great, guys. We'd submitted a 20-0 and an 18-2. We had at this point realised it wasn't actually looking like the blowout that the scores might have been saying it was. Who finished up next? Was it yourself, Chris? Chris, how did your game go?
Well, it wouldn't be a true story filled with suspense and excitement if someone didn't completely fuck up. So I decided to take that role. So I was playing into the Orcs. Now it was the map is Tide of Conviction, and I struggle on that map for a variety of reasons.
You were playing Lewis, who's in the chat at the moment, I believe.
I was, yeah, absolutely. And I played into Orcs once before with my Harlequins, and it was an incredibly tight game. I won by like a couple of points. Going into this game, I'm really worried that it could be a blowout, because obviously the team that get a big get the advantage and then build up and snowball the primary, you probably do create quite big score differentials. So I'm concerned about that blowout. And then on top of that, it's kind of like, I don't really know how to play this game. Obviously, he's got Goth pressure, so it's all just going to run at me if he goes first. I'm like screening things out, trying to deploy in the right spot. And then I got first turn. I'm like, right, how aggressive do I go? So my Shroud Runner is obviously invaluable in this game because, you can just pick up large amounts of stuff. And it's like, well, do I hang back? If I hang back, I can't really see anything. Then he could just wire and charge me. So I kind of made the decision to use my Shroud Runners to pick up a unit of Storm Boys. Well, almost a unit of Storm Boys. For the entire game, there was this one Storm Boy who just survived everything. It was quite impressive. And I pick up this other unit of Commandos. And I'm trading up in points, but it doesn't feel great because I feel like I could probably use the Shroud Runners later on. I also send in a unit of Striking Scorpions to pick up another unit of Storm Boys. So I've traded away 3-4 units to pick up some of his. And then Lewis then calls the war. And just because he knows I could use my Incarn to kill his boss and then stop the war. I should say this game was like really fantastic in terms of like discussion and intent and that sort of thing. So like first turn I wanted to get my Shroud Runners into his deployment zone because my Kilrig's a character so it can heroic intervene. I was like, right, is there a way around I can get it? So we spoke about it and we kind of got the fire and fade out and we measured it all out and worked out how it could be sorted. So it was a really great game in terms of like that. So he kind of comes back, kills the stuff, and I'm like, right, Incarn over there. I managed to teleport the Incarn back onto an objective to give myself a 4. And I kind of have a plan where I'm like, right, if I can get my Incarn across, kill one of these kill rigs, he's put some commandos in my bottom right hand corner. I send my Banshees over there, fight last the commandos. The Incarn can go do her thing, chop up a kill rig, do some mortal wound powers. I can get a couple of overrun points, just carry on screening. Then the Banshees go kill the commandos, the Incarn teleports back. Job's good. At this point, I haven't really done any maths on whether the Banshees do actually kill the commandos. But I'm like, of course they do. Why wouldn't they? And so anyway, Lewis has done a really good job of his kill rigs are all by objective. So if I kill a kill rig, stuff's just going to splash out and that. So anyway, I get to my charge and I'm like, right, okay. Oh shit, Kilrig's got an auto hitting gun. This is gonna auto hit me in Overwatch, isn't it? He's like, yep. Oh, okay, right. Well, I've got a save dice, so I managed to get through the Overwatch, chop up, kill the Kilrig, and then Lewis is like, right, I'm gonna fight on death. I'm like, oh no, I didn't realise that was an option. This has gone very badly. And the Kilrig then does 8 wounds to the Incarn. So the Incarn's now sat there in the middle of the army on 4 wounds. And then it's the time of the Banshees. And as I'm sure we can all predict, the Banshees did not deliver. They, in fact, only killed 5 commandos, because the commandos are starting a 5-up invuln, and there were some 5-ups made. And then, obviously, all the Banshees die on the swing back. So I've gone from a situation where, in my head, I've got dead commandos. I've also got this really clever plan where the Banshees are going to kill the commandos and then consolidate out to move block the Squig Hogs coming across. And they're going to, and the Incarn then can't be charged. I'm like, yeah, this is all great. This is all great. The Banshees die, and I decide not to teleport the Incarn back. At which point, I think 4 out of the 5 commandos ran away. Just failed them run. Well, I was like, oh shit, she could have been a bit safer, really, the Incarn, than sat in the middle of the board. Anyway, at that point, I think I then go across to Jack, and I'm like, I'm pretty fucked. I'm struggling to see how I'm going to score 50 points, because I now have no ability to control primary, and I've kind of lost all my killing power as well. So I scramble around. I'm basically table turn 4, and I don't manage to get the points. So Lewis and I spoke about it afterwards, and he said I should have played a lot more defensively, and it's certainly something I'm still trying to learn with the Inari, like when should I push and when should I just try and absorb just like the counter. If I'd sat in like my area, let him just keep picking up my screens whilst, because I can't trade particularly well. So yeah, I would love to play that game again and try it from a defensive perspective, but full credit to Lewis, he played it really, really well. And yeah, so we're now sat where far end of the table 20-0, table in 18-2, on the far right hand side 0-20, and then we've got our worst matchup on paper, which was Lee into Chaos Demons, which we knew was a rough one, but what magic could Lee pull out?
So going into this one as well, we knew we had 13 points to get, and looking across the tables, I was looking like pretty drawish here and there. So I was letting Chris and Lee know, I'm like, if you get 1 point, one point, you make Paul's life so much easier. Just 1 little point. If you can get that, we'll be all good. And then Chris said, I got 0. I'm like, yeah, yikes.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah. So Lee played into Beth. Lewis is saying Beth, who's our best player. So Lee had not only a hard counter, but it's into Beth, who is absolutely a very strong player. And she was playing Zinch demons. So it's not just demons, it is the worst demons for you. How did you find that one, Lee?
First of all, Bethany, what a joy to play. She was absolutely lovely. Just had a lovely chat all the way through the game. It's probably nice being in a position where you know you're going to smash someone. But yeah, a lovely game in itself. Supportive all the way through the game. Lots of nice conversations all the way through. So yeah, it was a fun game. And basically, it was just, I had to get in the mindset that I'm not going to kill a lot of things with my guard army or my guard list. It's not going to do that. So what can I do to just score something? And it was basically keeping everything back, putting a lot of obsec onto tanks and sentinels to try and hold onto my objectives with all the screamers and flamers flying across the board to tag everything that I owned. Using my mortars in different ways than I normally would. So again, throwing obsec on them and getting them onto objectives and moving them around just like a normal unit rather than actually shooting them. And using my reserves to try and pick up as many boots on the ground points as possible. And I think that was kind of the only thing that really helped me out, was just literally trying to keep all my characters within order range of each other, so I can throw those obsec buffs to raise and hold banners, to maintain objectives for as long as I possibly could before they were swarmed over. And the mortal wound output, as well as the speed of that Zeech list, as well as the amount of damage that it did in combat as well, which was almost surprising, was the mortal wound output that was picking up Lehman Russ. So the list that I was playing against was one, obviously extremely well piloted, but also just a horrible list to play against. But again, it's one of those ones where you just got to grin and bear it and just try and just pick up the points. And a lot of the time, I think when Jack came over, I had a bit of paper in my hand, scribbling away, trying to predict the points that I was going to pick up and where I had to pick them up to get over that 50-point mark, to pick up 1 point and maybe to hopefully pick up 2. And that's what I did in the end. I managed to score those last few beats on the grounds points. I managed to hold on to my home objective with the commander and the Vox, Master Vox still alive, with a kind of loads of demons bearing down on them. Sly Marbo appeared out of the shadows, picks up a point for boots on the ground whilst maintaining a kind of range on things. It was a struggle, but we managed to eke out a few points on that one.
Just to very quickly sing Lee's praises. Lee managed to score 2 points in one of the hardest counter matches. It's that should be a 0-20 every day of the week, and getting 2 points was incredibly massive. So just to go back to what we were saying, we only have one close match left. On each end of the table, we have a 20-0 and a 0-20, myself and Chris. In the middle, coming forwards one, Jack has managed to get a 18-2, but Lee has managed to scrape 2 points, so he's got a 2-18. We are neck and neck, and it really all comes down to the last game. And the last game goes long. Did it go right to the wire? Did it go right to the full 3 hours?
Yeah, pretty much bang on.
Yeah.
The 3 hours.
So
this game looks so close as well by the time we all went over there.
Yeah, I was having heart palpitations. I was just sat there for the better part of an hour and a half, just like this is awful. I hate this. I don't want to play armies that finish fast. How did your game go, Paul?
Right, yeah. So I got paired into obviously Craig Pendleton, who was a pilot in the Iron Hands. Just like to say, what a lovely guy. We had such a laugh. Everything was done with great intent. If we had made mistakes and that, we allowed each other to rectify them before anything else had moved on. And it was just what I would say was just a fantastic showing on both sides of the table. I hope he feels the same way. And I will go out and say now that I think this was probably one of the best games of Warhammer I've ever played. And it was tough, basically. He ended up, he ended up going first. He took some infiltrators onto one of my home objective at the start. So I was like, cool, now I've got to try and get these off. And he raised a banner on it, the cheek of it. But basically the way it went is that throughout the first, I think 1, 2 or 3 turns, our scores were literally neck and neck. Neither of us was scoring much primary because obviously this was another 6 mission objective Tide of Conviction.
Yep.
Yeah. So the primary game was just being absolutely lethal to both of us. And I'm pretty sure for like the first 3 rounds, we were near enough neck and neck. He was scoring. I was trying to score as much as I could on the primary while knocking him off the primary. But his secondary was scoring better than my secondaries were. I was just like, this is going well. It was going as I planned. I think I predicted a 3-4 for this game. I thought it would either be a draw or a slight win. Like my turn 2, I think he killed all but one of my Terminators, and he was on like 1 wound. I was like, cool. But the good thing about it is that it took nearly all of his army to do that, which meant that I had a free turn of the rest of my army not being shot at, which was quite good. But I was just trying to do as much of my usual jank stuff as I could. So like I had a land speeder that threw over to his corner L and just charged into his desolators and his suppressors to keep them in combat. So I was like, well, they're not going to kill a land speeder. And I think it took him 2 turns to kill a land speeder. He even had to send his what they call Tech Marine in there, and then absolutely whiffed on his combat phase. I was like, great, it survived on 1 wound. I was like, cool, I've got another turn of holding up half of his units. And I was just literally just throwing, like, because he didn't have much obsec, and he had the 2 units of the Vanguard vet, so I desolated them as quick as possible, get them out of the game, so I didn't have to worry about them. His 2 Primaris tanks called that just have about 1,000 shots on them. We had 2 of them.
Gladiator
Reapers.
Reapers.
The gladiators. Those things were just decimating anything that came out into line of sight. So I was trying to hide from them as much as possible or tag them in combat. At one point, he had one of them on my home objective. And this was getting to about turn 4. Everyone was saying I need to try and get out the win. I was like, I've got this massive tank set on my home objective. I've got no real anti-tank now. My desolators were down to like 1 squad. I think I had, by turn 4, because I went second, I had 1 unit of desolators. I think I had my 2 Talon Masters. I think I had another land speeder, and I had like my apothecary and my bannerman left, and that was it. I was like, I've got 2 turns with like 6 units. Most of them were one model characters.
Was it not 6 models?
Yeah, it felt like 6 models. He still had quite a big chunk of his army. He had both his desolators, he had some suppressors, he had his 2 big tanks, he had his characters still alive. I was like, I just need to try and keep knocking him off the primary and trying to score as much as I can for myself, trying to get the points up. So I basically, with this big tank on my home objective, I was like, right, and we spoke about this to make sure it was right. I was like, what my plan is I'm going to come out, I'm going to charge in my Talon Master to tag the tank, because I think it should be able to survive the Overwatch. It can have a 4-up invuln for 1 CP when he shoots it in the Overwatch. A lot of his stuff's all wounding on 5s, so I was like, it should survive. It's got 8 wounds. It's quite a tough thing to kill. And then he'll tag into the Reaper, and then what I'm going to do is my Desolator is going to move out. They're then going to charge into it and tag it in combat, and I'll leave it so that the Desolators are closer to the model than the Talon Master is. So in his turn, when he comes to shoot, he can't then shoot the Talon Master because technically it's not the closest model, because good old Games Workshop's writing rules. It still works even if you're shooting into combat, because it still has to follow the rules of shooting the nearest model and the character can't be shot. And obviously that tank, the Talon Master had rights of war, so I knew that he couldn't take my objective. I sent my other Talon Master over because he just had a drop pod on his home objective, so I was like, cool, I can contest that. Because one turn I even shot, that turn before that I shot my Desolators, 2 units of Desolators, one of them was in line of sight into the drop pod, didn't kill it. I was like, this is the toughest fucking drop pod I've ever seen in my life. Super cracks, 2 Wenger launchers, and 4 of the out of line of sight shooting. I think I did like 6 wounds to it. I was like, oh no, 5. What, they got 8 wounds normally, so I think it had 4 wounds left afterwards. I was like, this is the story of my. I was like, I'm losing my army here. But yeah, I was literally just using these few little models I had to keep knocking him down to 0 or 4 on primary. I was hiding my characters so he couldn't get his assassinate. I was making sure that where I could, I didn't have units on an objective that he could then steal for his shock tactics, while I was trying to get my shock tactics from him at the same time. But yeah, it just came down to absolutely the wire. And on my last turn, I think I managed to score. Yeah, I got an 8 on the primary. I got the overrun for 3. I got 2 banners and I got 3 for over moment. And the way it ended is it was what was the actual score? It was 66-51, which was just enough to get the 18-2. And when we finally calculated it all, when we went through, make sure all the scores were correct, to make sure that it was right, that nothing had been missed. And yeah, the celebrations afterwards were amazing. We hugged out afterwards.
Absolutely.
All round, with an amazing game of 40k.
Coming out with the 12-8 there, which pushed us into victory, which was not only incredibly tense, but incredibly well played.
And again, like you said, big shout out to Lee getting the 18-2, because them 2 points meant that what I did wasn't then resulting in a draw. Absolutely. That was the win.
Yeah.
I mean, we said that at the time.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Yeah, you got 2 points. We're like, you fucking killed it. You've done incredible. This is amazing.
You absolute hero.
I've never been so happy to lose a game by 18 points. This is 16 points. This is incredible. So that was great, and a fantastic round. And just to echo what Paul was saying, I think all of us, or most of us, I haven't spoken to everyone, so I don't want to speak to all, but just felt like it was an amazing round for sportsmanship. I know my game, incredible sportsmanship. We had a great time. Very much played by intent. I know a couple of the other guys have said that. Really enjoyed it. So that over, we went outside to eat, catch our breath, and we had a look at who was left. So there were 4 teams left in the running, undefeated, 4-0, a great spot to be in. And that was ourselves, Team England, Team Ignite, and Vanguard Tactics. And this is in no way disrespect to the Vanguard Tactics team. But we looked at that and we were like, I hope we fucking get Vanguard Tactics, because...
The lesser of 3 evils.
Oh, yeah. Which is very funny, because when we got the pairing and I walked past the Vanguard Tactics table, I said, we wanted you, and they said, we wanted you. So we
I
were
think
very
everyone
much-
wanted us, to be fair.
Oh, yeah, no, to be fair.
The underdogs.
we were absolutely the least
free
known
win.
team there. Well, I think we'd have had a good time into Vanguard Tactics.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
not saying
I
we
looked
won
at
what we deserve.
Vanguard Tactics list. I think our lists paired really, really well into Vanguard Tactics list, just by the armies that each of us had chosen. So it would have been a really close round, to be fair. So it's a real shame we didn't get that, but
Yeah.
in the end.
Absolutely. So, round 5, we did, as you may have seen from the title of the episode, draw into Team England. And was there a semi-final upset?
No.
Yeah, there was some upset. But do you want to give us a quick whiz through on the pairings? We're getting quite close to 10:30, so if we can just sort of go quickly on this one. How do we approach
sure.
the pairings?
So Space Wolves was pretty rough for all of us. GSC was pretty good for all of us, with my new knowledge of GSC, having played them once. Eldari was pretty drawish, but I had a decent good matchup. T-Suns was a bit swingy because it was a bit of an anomaly, and Necrons was kind of a bit rough on the draw for us. So they put down Eldari, we put down Custodies again, so 5-5 on the Custodies down first. They offered Space Force GSC, we offered Yunari and Tau, which gave us, unfortunately, Chris didn't get his mirror matchup of Eldari into Yunari, so he could get a free coaching lesson. So we had Custodies and GSC, Tau into Eldari, which is a good matchup for the Tau in theory. I think they just wanted to take me out of the Matrix because my list on paper was okay against quite a few of theirs.
Josh was saying that they were worried a bit about the Tau because of the shooting element on that particular board. It's quite an open board, so they were like, "Oh, we want to make sure we try and take out the Tau and the guard, so that they can't blow
Leaf blower away.
Yeah, exactly.
And obviously, we'd seen the Custodians into Space Wolf matchup already, and you didn't even ask if I wanted to play it. You just didn't give that choice there.
Yeah, exactly. So next we put down Yunari in its traditional spot, and they put down T-Suns, we put down Guard and Dark Angels, they put down Space Wolves, and I've left that spot blank, but I guess it was Necrons. So we end up with Yunari into Space Wolves, Dark Angels into T-Suns, and Guard into Necrons, which is a 3, a 4, a 3, a 2, and a 3, which is pairing into a draw, which is basically what you would expect against quite a high tier team. If both sides get the pairing matrix right, you pair into a draw, and then it all comes down to who can play better and eke out those extra points.
Because one of the things also with the pairings is obviously you do it a lot on how the matchup should go if 2 people of equal skill are playing the game. Obviously, Team England are very good players.
Yeah, I mean, if you were going to play it on player skill, at the end of the day, you don't know necessarily every single player, so it's kind of pointless to play on player skill because you think you're going to get beat by someone who you think is better than you, because you don't know how they're going to play it. If it is a good matchup for you, they might just hide in the corner and let you get a small win, rather than expose a bunch of stuff for you. So it's always better to play on list rather than player skill, and especially this round. So the last round, it's round 5, and we were undefeated. I mean, you're going to give it the best shot you can. You're going to always try and go for it. You'd be doing a disservice to yourself if you didn't do everything you could to win.
Absolutely. So let's go quickly, I guess, right to left. If we start with you, Paul, you were playing into Manny Chima's Thousand Suns. How did that go for you?
It went as well as I think anyone could expect that game to have gone. I've never had good experience playing into Thousand Suns. I don't know whether it's just because of all their psychic stuff or all their janky stuff, or that I kind of underestimate the fact that a lot of my shooting is 1 damage, 2 damage, apart from like the super cracks, and obviously they can minus damage. If things are 1 damage, they get +1 to their armor save, and then there's the strat, which I completely forgot about, that they can make stuff -1 damage, which then kicks in their all is dust ability. So when I came to my shooting, I was like, cool, I'm gonna put all my talent. He had his big unit of 10 Terminators on the bottom right hand objective outside of the ruin. I was like, cool, I'm just gonna shoot all my army into it. And he was like, yeah, I can spend like Manny, he is a very good player, and we did talk about a lot of stuff while we were playing, and he did say, look, if you do that, I can spend 3 CP or -1 damage, and you're not really going to achieve much. I was like, yeah, that's a fair point. So I sort of rejigged things a bit, but yeah, it was an absolute smashing. I basically, as soon as it went, I was like, all I can try and do is try and grab a point. I was like, if I can get to the 51 mark, I'll be happy into this matchup. And it literally came down to I think the end of the game. I threw Azrael away into a character to try and get another assassinate point. I was doing behind enemy lines every turn, so I maxed that on my secondaries. I was just trying to hold on to at least one objective, trying to get 2 if I could. And then on the final turn, I was like, I ended up just throwing a talent, I think it was my Talon Master or Speeder, into his deployment zone because I went second, get behind enemy lines, and then just dropped a bomb. And that was enough to get me to the 51 points. I was like, cool, I'll take that. It was, yeah, but we had a great game, fantastic. We were just, everything was done really well between the both of us. Yeah, we just generally had a good laugh, I found.
It's great. And getting a point is
And I got smashed.
absolutely yeah. Well, no, you got a point, and as you say, sometimes when you realise it's all gone to pot, getting that 1 point, even just for pride's sake, is important. Because I don't think we were under illusions that we were going to take them to a smashing victory or anything along those lines. Next across, I believe, was you, Jack, and you were playing into. Who were you playing into?
The Eldari.
Eldari. Robbo, how were you into Robbo?
Yes. So in theory, it's a good matchup for me. Again, I've put on this with a lot of indirects. But again, I'm worried about being too over-aggressive. I just don't have enough experience in 40k. I only started playing in Ox, so I was kind of worried about it. And I had played against Chris as well with the Yanari, and I know how the rough kind of way that game goes. I decided to go Assassination instead of Grind in this one because the list gave it 25 points on Assassinate, so I thought it's probably a good chance to get some points in Assassinate on this one. Yeah, so I put everything in the big L, apart from the broadsides, which are a bit further forward, and I don't think I played aggressively enough is the long and short of it. I spent a turn, I didn't move the crisis unit forward into sort of the forward L ruin that you get access to on that map when I could have done, and as a result of that, I was able to like push really far into his L and then start doing like warp rituals without needing to quicken back. And then he was able to just throw out a ton of mortals onto my commanders, which there's just no counterplay for. I'll do like 1 with one of the Eldari spells and then 6 with Mirror of Minds, because apparently that doesn't happen very often, and yet that happened to me twice this game. But yeah, so that threw me off. I did try to fight for the points as much as possible. I did do a couple of bits of jank, like the crisis unit moving 10 inches forward, firing Fade another 6 inches, then making an 11-inch charge into a War Walker on that onto Matt's home objective. That would just score me some points, as well as that put me close enough to just blast a ton of characters out. So I did a fair effort in that game, considering I think I played like the macro of it quite poorly. I was able to claw a lot back. I had to put myself on the back foot, giving me 51 into 75, which is a 14-6 loss, which I will take every day of the week. Big shout out to Matt. He just showed me how I should have played the game after I did it, and I was super happy with it. In fact, I played one of the guys on the 6++ server on TTS who had copied essentially a list that he'd seen very similar to Matt's list when we played it. I didn't realise before we were playing, and I was like, I've just been coached on how to beat this. Let's see if I can do any better against it, which fortunately I did for myself. But less fortunately for my opponent. But yeah, so another shout out to Matt. 5 minutes into the game, I started rolling my dice, and he was like, "Are you a fantasy player?" I'm like, well, "Yeah, how did you know?" And he says, "Well, I look at all your dice. There's only like 5 people in the world that have some of these dice because they're all team dice from various team events in there." We had a good chat about that, and yeah, great guy. Hopefully, I play him on some top tables in the next couple of months.
Absolutely. If anyone's going to know about teams, it is absolutely Robbo, king of teams.
Yeah.
Runs his own events and goes to plenty of them with Team England. Fantastic. So I think getting 6 points there was a real achievement, really good showing. Next across the table, I think would be you, Chris, would it not?
It would, yes. So only 3 times in my 40k career have I felt genuinely helpless. They've all 3 have been this year. One was against Vic in the last team event. One was I went second against Mark Rumbleholm's Necrons. Had his entire army basically in the mid-board as my Harlequins couldn't deal with it. The 3rd time was in this game. I was playing against the captain, Josh Roberts, and his Space Wolves. And the interesting thing is, he's like going through his list and telling me all the things they can do and all the synergies and buffs. And it's all heavily built towards combat and getting advancing charges off and committing wholesale damage in the combat phase. So I'm like, okay, cool. But then it just so happens there is an incredible amount of high quality shooting as well, which is just, and this unit's got some melter and this unit's got, and like 30 melter shots later, most of your army's gone. And essentially what happened was he got first turn, staged a bunch of stuff, pushed everything forward, killed a little bit in shooting. I stupidly redeployed some striking scorpions to be seen, if he cut an angle. And he kind of nearly killed my wave serpent. And he'd staged some stuff up in the centre room. So I'm like, right, how do I deal with this? I don't really know. I guess I've got to try and kill this unit. But his measurements were so precise. So Space Wolves have this 6-inch heroic, and I was trying to cut angles and charge in places, and it was such a pain. Essentially what happened was I was able to deal with all the staging units, but due to Wolfen fighting on death and an interrupt and stuff, I still lost quite a lot of my combat threat in that turn. And then the rest of his army came at me and had an incredibly long shooting phase, considering it's a bunch of Space Wolves with melters. And at the end of that, I would say 3/4 of my army was dead. Then he did a bit of combat, and I was just sat there this isn't fun. This is death. So I was like, right, well, you know what? The Incarn's going to have some fun. So the Incarn teleported across, ran over to the deployment zone, did some powers, chipped some damage, and had an 8-inch charge into these 2 units. And I was like, well, I'll just use my 6 on my fate dice, because then all I need to do is not roll the 1. So,
oh no,
obviously the 1 came up. There was no CP to spend because I was so pissed off that I'd failed Storm of Whispers. I just CP'd it earlier. And the Incarn sat there in the middle, and the entirety of the backline of the Space Wolves went, hello. To be fair, Josh then did forget about the teleportation, because he did then start shooting some other stuff, and the Incarn got to teleport away. And I was like, ha!
What up, Jeff?
I tricked you. It may be that the Incarn is now back in my deployment zone when I did actually want her at the end of the table, but she is still alive. And anyway, he had his go on turn 3, and I was like, I can't be bothered to play anymore, Josh. We'd spent so long talking. We'd done a lot of chatting. We were already quite far behind the other games in terms of what turn we were on compared to others, and the writing was on raw. But Josh was an absolute gent. We had a good chat about the game afterwards. We had a chat about a whole variety of things during the game. Really enjoyable, but yeah, my bum hurts still.
Excellent. Next across the table was me. I will keep this brief. As Chris was saying, there have only been 2 times in 40k where I felt truly powerless. No, make it 3. That game against Matt Palmer that I mentioned earlier was the first one. But this was a game where I thought I understood the matchup. I thought I understood how GSC played into it. Turns out that Mike Porter, not only is he very good, he also has a list that is full of damage 3 that is very fast, that I did not respect. So I put myself down as a 3 in the pairing. I thought if player skill was equal, I could get that to, you know, like a 9-11, a 10-10, something close. Obviously, Mike's incredible. He had a 97% win rate with his Harlequins last year. I did say, like, you know, just out of professional curiosity, have you lost with your Gene Stealers yet? And he said no. So I was like, cool. Just so I know where I'm at. I've been
Challenge
vocal.
accepted.
I personally think Mike Porter's the best player in the world, and I'm not just saying that because he spanked me. It does make me feel a little bit better, though, and I've wanted to play against him for a while, so that was nice. Basically, he won the roll-off. He went first, and he pre-game moved his bikes, and he advanced a couple of trucks, and he brought his Broodlord forwards aggressively with an advance. I was like, oh, okay, cool, that's interesting. Then he popped out the Kellamorph, who just wasted pretty much an entire squad of Sagittar, you know, the Sagitguard. He threw demo charges through walls. All told, his turn 1, before I got to do anything, he had killed 2 squads of 3 Sagis, a squad, 2 of 3 Wardens. So for those keeping track, that is 8 Custodies bodies, 400 points. And also the full squad of Witch Seekers, which I had, you know, moved up to try and play, you know, screen out my lines a little, get into a forward position, even just soak some damage. And he put the Patriarch back into reserves. And I went, oh no. Oh. I was expecting to take a little bit less than that damage on my turn 2, because Gene Stealers typically come out, have a bit of a slower turn 1, and then explode turn 2 and pick up, you know, chunks of your army. So I was expecting to just advance my army forwards and be fine. Yeah, that didn't happen. I went forwards. I picked up some nominal units. I did very little of worth on my turn 2. Passed it over to Mike. At this point in, Chris still hasn't finished deploying, and I turned to him. I was like, "This is done." I think I had told you that I was getting 0-20 before you'd even deployed your army, so that's demoralising to have to put up with. I'm terribly sorry, dear leader. But yeah, turn 2. It was really fun to watch how Mike positioned his units. He was getting the crossfire. He, you know, basically had redundancy. He just put everything where it needed to be. I made him laugh a few times. That was basically all I got out of this game. You know, we had a lot of fun. I really enjoyed playing against Mike, and he laughed at my jokes. Either he enjoyed them or it was sympathy. It's possibly just sympathy. And the long story short, by his turn 3, I had no models left on the board, and I went second. So I had 2 turns to do very little, and that was, yeah, an experience. But I really enjoyed playing Porter, and I'm looking forward to hopefully playing him again, this time in a matchup that is less unfavoured for me, and one where I understand the matchup better. So that'll be good. Finally, on to you, Lee. You had the last game into Chris Kinnair.
I did, yes. A strange game is probably the best way to put it. So it was fun. It was nice. It was good tempered, enjoyable. Some hilarious moments with is it the plasma site? The little guy soaking up ridiculous amount of charges from Kassakin.
He's just a little guy.
And yeah, so Necrons got the first turn. Necrons did their usual Necrony, we're all obsec, massive push into some of the middle board, doing huge amounts of secondary scoring. And then it came into the end of that turn. I start prowling around the board, looking for a spot to drop some Kassakin. And then something happened which was quite unexpected. I didn't really understand what was going on. But Chris picked up a Technomancer, which was in his very back ruin, and moved it into one of the ends, picking up a Destroyer, moving it back, creating a bigger footprint. And I had to stop and go, hang on a minute, what's that? What's going on? And I said, Chris, what are you doing? It's not your movement. And I was very, very confused by just what happened. And I said, well, no, you're going to have to put that back. It's my turn now. And I was at the top tables playing against a big player, and I didn't know what to do. I was like, whoa, I don't understand what's going on. I can only rationalise that you're trying to reduce my ability to put my Kassakin into that hole and put your Technomancer where he can heal people, but it's not your turn to do that. So that confused me. I didn't really know how to handle it. I thought, well, we've resolved that problem. It was a strange problem, but we've resolved the problem of you moving when it's not your turn to move. I'm going to go and get a drink. So I went and got a Coke, got him a Coke, came back and played the majority of the game in a lovely, good-natured way, as it's meant to be. And then, obviously, we're on a clock. Zach comes around and goes, oh, your clock's wrong. You're going to have to finish on at 11 minutes. So when it gets there, that's your time. And again, I don't normally play on a clock particularly often. So what Zach said, I took as, yeah, that's the time you finish a game. So came to Chris, gave him a couple of extra minutes. He was down to 9 minutes left on the clock when he finished his, I think it was third turn. It was a pretty slow game. And I still had 31 minutes left. So I say, oh, we're out of time. So I start moving my models. He said, look, I'm just going to chunk these here. We know where they are. I'm bringing on all my reserves. So I'm covering, getting maximum boots, pushing my command squad into the middle. And then Chris was like, oh, we need to, I'm going to have some of that time to do my stuff. I don't think he actually said that, but it's kind of what we're going to do. The time's out. I'm in the lead. And I, again, with my naivety, playing probably once a month, I was like, Chris, what do we do here? I'm not really sure what to do, because my team captain, Chris. I said, Chris, come and help. I don't really know what to do to resolve this problem. Do I give Chris some of my time, or do we have to clock out? I don't understand what to do here. And then it was resolved, and it was an odd game in the way it finished and the way it started. The middle part of the game was lovely, but those two elements soured it a little bit for me, because I didn't really understand what to do with those problems, and whether I should have taken the time for myself to score maximum secondaries, or whether I should go, no, actually, you should have the time. You should have some of my time, because I've got loads left, and then you can win the game more. The result didn't matter at that point, because the result was done. As you say, the other guys have said that the other games were high-scoring wins for Team England. But on a personal note, should I have taken the time to win, because it was my right as the player with time on the clock, or do I concede that and let him play out his turn? And a situation I've never been in before and didn't know the right answer for, and I'm sure a lot of players out there probably have these quandaries about where does sportsmanship start and end, and what should you do in those situations, and I'm probably still none the wiser. So I'll open that one to the floor.
I think when you're playing on a clock, the idea is obviously you're supposed to manage your time to be able to complete a game in the allotted time that you're given. I mean, if you go by the rule book of the UKTC events, essentially once you've clocked out, you can't. The only thing you can do now is roll saves and I think score primary if you're on it, and everything else is literally you can't do anything. You can't move your models. You can't interact. I'm not sure if you. I think you can swing back if you're in combat. I haven't really read into it because I've never I've only played on a clock like 3 times before, and I've never had any problems with my own personal timekeeping. But yeah, it's one of them. Like you said, it's one of them things. Is do you allow your player then to have some of your time? But then if you only got to round 3 and he's run out of time, then I think that's poor management of his timekeeping, not of yours. But yeah, it's a difficult one, I'd say.
And like what I said to Lee, is very much you as a player can make that decision. I think what Paul says about the amount is probably quite important, because as we've spoken about before, I think when Davey was there, it's about time is a resource, and if you're both there scrambling away and you've got 2 minutes left each, then actually it's all pretty much the same, and you've just had a fair even game. But when someone's run is so far away from the other person, your lead's on 30, the other guy's run out, then it's where you've used all of your time. And
especially when it's turn 3. If it was turn 5, you'd probably be a bit like, yeah, okay, I'll give you 5 minutes to play out your turn sort of thing.
Yeah.
But after turn 3, I'll be like, well, you've used an hour and a half of the game time, and if this is as far as you've come, then that's your problem, surely. You should be able to pilot and play your army in the allotted time.
Yeah, exactly. As Jack says. So Jack says it's fine with sharing time when it's close, but 31 versus 6 minutes. It's clear Chris has taken majority of the time in this game. And yeah, and it's what did Josh Roberts say when he came over? By the way, Lee.
It was kind of, we were kind of trying to quickly calculate what the score could be, and I think I probably calculated it wrong under the pressure, and I think that I could have maxed out my secondaries and I could have got 12s in my final 2 turns for primary if the clock had stopped. So I think the one problem was because I personally assumed that Chris understood what I was doing, and I thought I'd been clear that I said that he'd run out of time. My movement had been based around him already being clocked out.
Yeah.
So everything was in the open.
Yeah.
Everything was visible, shootable, chargeable if he had more time. And I think it was that if I give him more time, my army gets decimated because it's out in the open now. But if I don't give him time, I can go on and push for a win. And again, personally for me, that would have been great. I can walk away and say I've beaten from someone from Team England. Great.
Yep.
That's a nice something to kind of go home and tell the kids. But it's I don't want to be the guy that has to use that to win. I think you guys know me. I want to win in a fun way where we've had a great game and I've actually used loads of player skill and I'll walk away going, yeah, that was brilliant. But when it comes down to things like, I think this is in 40k is possibly a problem where, unless, like in any other sport, you've got a referee with you all the time making decisions for you, whereas in 40k it comes down to dialogue and discussion, and there are probably always mistakes in every game anyone plays, but how do you deal with that? And I think it's a tricky one.
I think
Go on.
A big part of it is like how because I'm thinking about this, like, let's imagine we're currently tied with England and you then have that decision to make. Is it a different decision? Do you make a different decision compared to the fact we've lost to the game doesn't matter? Because the game still matters to you. The game doesn't. The game matters to Chris in terms of pride, I guess. In terms of the team, both teams, the game doesn't really matter. So it's a bit more insular. But imagine if the whole opportunity to get into the final is on the line, then there could be an argument that actually you should then be the cutthroat, or not even cutthroat, follow the rules. But then the counter argument is, well, actually you should be consistent and it doesn't matter what the situation is. I think the only reasonable way is that you discuss it before the game starts. And it's obviously hindsight's a wonderful thing, but I think I know that whenever I play with a clock and I can kind of tell that it could potentially go, I think you need to make sure it's very clear from both players' perspective. So I remember playing a Demons guy, and he was like, don't worry about the time, we'll just play. And obviously I played people like Julio before, who is very much, you're out of time, you can now roll your saves or you can score your primary if you're sat on it, and that is it. And that's just the hard rule he plays. And I guess it's consistency is something we should look for. But yeah, I don't know.
So I guess I'll play devil's advocate in this situation. I think particularly when playing at a UKTC event, I think managing your clock, particularly in the high tables, is a key part of the game that you play, as much as the terrain is a part of.
Can I just interrupt real quick? I'm going to have to shoot off, I'm afraid, because I've got to be up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and it's 11 o'clock now. But thanks very much for having me on, and just well done to the whole team and for both teams, really, on what we achieved at the weekend. It's probably one of the best weekend showings, especially for a teams event that we've put in. So congratulations to all of us. And I'll see everyone later. Good luck with the rest of the podcast. I'll tune in and find out what happens after I've gone.
Thanks so much.
Punch up.
I think we're pretty much near the end, but thanks for coming on, Paul, and thanks for putting up consistent fours.
Call the fours. Cheers, mate. Bye.
All right, lovely. And is Jack still with us? He is. Fantastic. If you want to wrap up your point there, Jack.
Yeah, so for me, it's managing your clock is as much part of the game as the terrain is. So if you're out of time, you're out of time. Especially on the top table, playing for the last game. it's going to sound kind of sucky, but a player on Team England should know better. It's an international event. I'm pretty sure that your opponent had plenty of team event experience. He knows how things go. It's thing for the movement thing as well. If you're going to play by that kind of level of intent, it's not really the place for it on top tables, like on, as I say, on the last round, in my opinion. And it really needs to be a little bit more strict. The other thing I would say is, just as a thing for anyone doing a team event, if you're negotiating scores or talking things out or anything like that, 100% of the time, do not let the opponent or a bunch of other players come and tell you what the score should be and you're stood there on your own. You absolutely need to have your team with you to back you up, or better yet, a judge. You don't want like 2 or 3 of the opponent team players telling you how the game should go, because even though they're probably not intending to pressure you, you're going to feel the pressure, like you're being hemmed in, and you're probably going to agree to a lower score than it should be. So if you ever feel like you're in a position like that where you have to negotiate, get a judge, or if failing that, a couple of your teammates to back you up, and so you can feel a little bit less hemmed in.
On
So
that
it's a
one,
good idea.
I believe, I think I could be wrong, but I believe in the UKTC pack, you're not actually meant to talk out games.
Yeah, it's just a general rule.
Yeah, no, absolutely, you're 100% right. But I think it's very different if it's like a 20-0-0-20 and you go, we both know I can't score any more points. This is the end of the game. That's fine. But when you're getting down to the nitty gritty, it's a little more difficult to make sure you're doing it fairly. Yeah, so it is coming up 11 o'clock. Is there anything else that we want to touch on? Any last thoughts on anything we've talked about, or is everyone happy there?
No, I think we're obviously really happy with how we got on. To get to that stage was awesome. We had 5 fantastic games, but a big shout out to Megan, who were our other team that went. They went 2-3, but they were a real credit. We had lots of reports of the teams they played into had an awesome time, and so thank you very much to them for representing the team so well. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for coming and listening. Thank you all for coming and being on the show. Lee, it's been fantastic. Happy one. Jack as well. Chris, I guess it's been fine.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. I really appreciate the opportunity to play with you, and hopefully
it was a lot of fun.
Play it against and maybe again with you sometime. So again, really appreciate it.
All right, that has been a ramble between all of us for 2.5 hours. We had a great time. We hope you had a great time. Thanks for coming.
Bye.